Is the mic on? Testing 1, 2. Okay. Good morning, goeiemorgen, dumelang, molweni, absheni. How do I say it in Venda? Nda. Awe. Good morning, everybody. If everyone outside could join us, we're about to start. Good morning, lady. We're going to try this again because I think the energy is not here. Great morning. All right, good morning. Welcome to day 3 of the ABASA convention. My name is Thabo Godfrey Mungatani. I will be your host for the whole day. It's good to see everybody back and energized. If you could also just try and move closer. Thank you so much. It's been an interesting 2 days already. So we will be getting on with the program now. Madam Press, just to confirm, we live online as well. So good morning to everybody online. Thank you for making the time to join us. So today is a jam-packed day, and there's a lot of discussions that we need to have. So what we'll do is we'll move very swiftly. Today we'll be focusing on a number of things, but before I do that, I'd like to just officially welcome everyone, but I will ask my Madam President to come up. Welcome everybody, and then we can get the show on the road. Madam President. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome the President, Ms. Linda Makoma.
Good morning, everybody.
From UJ.
It's lovely to see you all up. These are the champions that know how to recover after Friday night.
I've seen pictures, and now
Thank you
I'm
very much for
seeing
being
you
here,
in
colleagues.
person.
I think we've had an eventful couple of days, kicking off with the past president's dinner and the golf day, and yesterday the business indaba and the women's circle.
But actually in 2017,
but today
I
we're
was
really
the
going
Cypher
back to who we
ambassador.
are as an organization and some of the conversations we need to be having. So I'm particularly happy to have our elders in the room, and I want to recognize the founding president of ABASA. He's there sitting down, President Jeff, the man who started it all with the founding members of ABASA. He is flanked by 2 beautiful ladies who have also led this organization. So Mamfuti Mtoba is also here, who is the first woman president, not the last woman president. And she's joined by Umam Tandaswafubu. Madam President, thank you very much for being here. And we have other presidents that are coming through. But also we have our stakeholders. And I think it's particularly important that I recognize you. And thank you for making this convention possible. Everything we're doing here is the collective effort of all the people that believe in the vision and the mandate of ABASA. It's lovely to see UNISA here. It's lovely to see SIPAs, SICAs, ACCAs, CIMAs, and really driving the inclusivity that we're talking about. We really want to see leadership excellence. And these conversations are speaking to our strategy, which cuts across education, transformation, and economic participation of our people. But we need to get to the core of what is our role as accountants, what is our role as ABASA, and some of the things we are seeing in the country. We can't limit ourselves to the profession and to the sector. We are an enabling sector, and therefore we play an important role. So as I open up today and welcome you, I want us to be mindful as we engage that what we are saying here today should be what we are going to do when we leave here. We didn't spend all this money together for us now to waste it and not actually do the work and implement some of the things that we believe should be done. And ABASA has the power to do it. Thank you very much for being here. Welcome, and please enjoy the day.
Thank you, Madam Press. Today we will have a number of panels touching on a number of issues, and I think as the President has articulated, we will be looking at transformation, inclusion, economy, and leadership development. Some of the themes that we'll be covering. We will start with the very key one, which is education. And leading that panel discussion is our Chair of Academics, Katlego Machiro, who will introduce the panel. Katlego, can we just welcome Katlego Machiro onto the stage? Over to you.
Morning, everyone. I do apologize if I speak like an academic, but that's just my nature. I'm used to speaking in that way, and I'm sure you will see it as well from the panel. As Godfrey said, my name is Katlego Machiro, and I'm the chairperson, of the academics. And before I introduce the panel, just like to introduce the topic of what we actually want to talk about is obviously within the education space, and what we want to focus on is the trajectory of education. Where are we post-COVID? And in particular as well, capacitation. We do know that COVID robbed us of certain number of attributes that we could not get from the typical education system. So we will talk about that, we will discuss that, and later on, obviously, you will have the opportunity as well to ask the panel or raise your views or your comments. So on that note, let me introduce my panel. The first one is, Dr. Moses Hlongwane, and he is the acting dean in the College of Accounting at UNISA. Yeah, you can sit, sorry. Take a seat, sir. And then a rose among the thorns, Boniswa Madigizela, senior lecturer at the University of Johannesburg. And then, let me wait for my manners. Lastly, Carl Smith, who is the senior manager, and his portfolio includes education, training, and membership support at the South African Institute of Professional Accountants. Can we get some oil? Oh, I'm audible. So thank you guys for joining me. Yes, I'm pretty excited. I love education, and I'm pretty excited to just pick your brains and hear what your thoughts are. And I thought just to kick us off, and we've always talked about COVID and the negative impacts and what it has automatically taken from us. But I thought maybe to kick off this conversation, I just want to hear from you guys, especially taking into account that you interact with different people at a different level, What are the positives, things that you have seen that COVID has actually introduced within the education space from your own vantage points? So I will start with Ms. Madigizela.
You're starting with me. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you so much, Kat, for that question. Having been in the education space at UJ for the past 10 years, it has allowed me to have the opportunity to actually see the ins and outs of the different cohorts each and every year. And to answer your question with regards to what are the positives that COVID brought for us, I would say firstly, COVID brought opportunity by exposing us as a country with regards to what we say is higher education and how that higher education is fit for purpose. So, and it showed us an opportunity to see that in reality, digital literacy is very much behind because mainly within University of Johannesburg, majority of our students, close to more than 80%, come from marginalized backgrounds, and which represents most of our communities that we serve. And by virtue of that, you then realized that there is a lack of resources that actually equips these very young ones that are meant to be the future workforce. So the blessings is that it almost called for a reform, if I should say, to when we say we are educating, what are we doing? And probably most of the time, we had focused so much on technical content. And whereas, therefore, education is more holistic than just giving content. And it gives us the opportunity to re-engineer, to actually say, all right, we thought we were doing A, B, C, D. So are we meeting that? So, if you don't mind, I can actually give an example to say the 2020 cohort, which we call the COVID babies, only had 2 months of actual on campus. And do you know, or you can actually go back to your own experience to say how much learning took place, not in the classroom, but by you entering this institution, by you engaging and getting a sense of belongingness by virtue of seeing others, by going to the library, others are studying, others are doing that, by even stepping into an exam hall, you know, it prepares you. So those students only had 2 months. And by virtue of 2021, they are in 3rd year now. And actually, what are we dealing with? We are dealing with first years. So they are not ready. I would put it that way, in a sense that the environment being the physical education space, there's an added development and learning that it puts into the person in addition to what we deliver in the classroom. So that's where I would like to end off with regards to what
it has
the
contributed.
benefits that COVID actually brought for us.
That is
Thank you.
such a unique take on it, like looking at it from an opportunity viewpoint, because when you say opportunity, often people attach gains to it. But it came across as, let's go back and relook what we need to do. Moses, with you being in an institution where it's distance, more or less people are on their own in the inverted commas. What do you think, like the same question, what have you seen as a positive in that regard?
Thank you so much, and good morning to our audience here. Well, from UNISA point of view, which is an ODEL institution, the first thing that we actually had to look at is the kind of the graduate that the industry needs. It is important that now we had to relook at our curriculum. We had to relook at our PQM in order to make sure that what we offer to the industry, what we offer to the country, the continent, and the globe is actually fit for purpose. So the lesson that we learned as an institution from the COVID babies, as my colleague has already said here, is that as the institution, we were actually looking at moving into fully online in terms of our teaching and learning assessments, especially examinations. But that was a strategic plan for 2020, 2030 and beyond. But having COVID, then it means we needed to accelerate. So therefore, that's what we benefited from COVID, that because we were able to accelerate moving into fully online. And then also, we are now able to offer all our assessments, conduct all our assessments fully online, well, not taking away the fact that we do have challenges. But as your question now, it's based only on, for now, on the benefits.
Yeah.
Yes. So we accelerated the moving into fully online. Two, matching our PQM with the needs of the industry, which is very, very important to make sure that our offerings are actually fit for purpose, and also that the graduates that we produce, making sure that they are relevant for the industry, especially in terms of technology. Also looking at the how independent our students are. So that's all I can say for now.
That's interesting, and I think you touched on a lot, I think indirectly, on graduate attributes that, and I think that's where now, Carl, you come in terms of you getting these guys from the university space, and probably what you've gotten was they're probably in their postgrad or in their third year. And what have you seen as a professional institute in terms of what are the positives, and possibly maybe to add on that, what can we do to just
Yeah, thank you, and good morning to everyone. And the elders, I haven't seen some of them for years. I see Mr. Van Rooyen somewhere, and I thought he won't be able to recognize me, but it was so good to see some of the elders. So good morning to everyone. COVID really happened. When COVID happened, we were fortunate because we were busy with a project to take everything online. Our processes and our activities, to use technology to operate the institute and serving our members. So when that happened, it just fast-tracked our project to go online, fast-tracked our CRM processes. So that was the one benefit. The other one was and I think the Organization for Economic Development, Cooperation Development, terms it and coins it as COVID has created what we call the talent economy. And in this economy, because employees and graduates have learned how to work from home without formal structures and rigid rules, and they have delivered, it has created a group of people who are now no longer want to cooperate or work within the traditional structure, policies and processes, and they ask you straight, what's the point of going back to the office? What's the point of sitting in the office? So that's the word talent economy. The other one is it's created the skills gap. It's called the COVID-19 and the skills gap from a university perspective, because we have to take in graduates to train them as trainees. Now, fortunately or unfortunately, and because of the economic circumstances, many of the practices couldn't take in graduates who completed their qualifications because they were not secured in the economy, business, and clients. So we were sitting with a group, and I've seen a total change this year in the accreditation of training centers for us, where we see an increase in training centers again. During COVID, we've seen a decrease. And so we sit with a group of graduates today still, and I think there are many of them out there who don't have training contracts because the firms are only opening now. There's I mean, I don't think we have really recovered economically from COVID. That is a process. So graduates, for the foreseeable future, and we don't know how long, we also, you know, it's all theory, how long it will take, they may struggle to get training contracts. And that may despond them because they've studied, they've got their honors, they've got their BComs, and yet there are not enough training centers. And then lastly, I think on a personal level, COVID created the importance for us as people in our personal lives to value families and relationships, and therefore the demand for the work-life balance, and it's a challenge that we as a profession and companies will face, because the generation, what they call the millenniums, who were born between 1980 and in the early 2001, they are the only generation who grew up in a digital environment. They operated for 3 years in that environment. And they will be the majority of the workforce within the next 3 or 4, 5 years. And they have operated and they've lived working from home, and that is one of the things they will demand is, explain to me, why must I come sit in the office? Yeah.
That is so interesting. I think just touching as well on online, I've also found that some of my students will tell me, does this class need to be face-to-face? Because we can use technology and listen to you and
Correct.
go about my day and do
Correct.
other stuff. So that's quite interesting that it's felt across all board. And I think what you guys have touched on is that definitely there is an upward trend. Accounting education in whatever form, it is moving. It is not like a white elephant. It's not just sitting there. So I think in light of that, just pick your brains and hear from a marginalized group perspective. You know, yes, we are moving, but we've just touched on the digital divide. What are your thoughts on that? What have you guys have experienced, or what have you seen out there in terms of that trajectory moving, but then where are the marginalized group and where do they fit in terms of that upward trend? Bonnie?
Thanks, Kat, for that question. And it is a tough question. Don't get me wrong. And I say this because it touches on also when we say transformation of the profession. So where now we find ourselves to say there's a digital divide. And where there's a digital divide, that means there's haves and have-nots. So the students that seem to have progressed or flourished during this time are the ones whose foundational education was such that there's a Wi-Fi at home. They've learned how to self-manage because of the type of education that they had received. So where majority of the marginalized come from, the background is not as supportive as the ones that I just referred to. And so they are starting off not on an equal footing, and they are expected to perform at a level that the haves should be. So now, that digital divide meant there's a skills, for a lack of a better word, gap in the individual to say, I have to learn this accounting syllabus, and guys, we all know those 4 subjects. They are hectic, it's like having 4 boyfriends. You know? So over and above that, now there are literacy levels. Literacy means I have to learn how to navigate the lack of Wi-Fi. Ne? I have to learn information literacy, guys. So it's digital information, because now you have to unpack this information and make it, because I mean, let's be honest, most of our subjects are very abstract. Very abstract, and you have to bring them down to a lived experience. But now, if I don't have that interaction with my lecturer so that they bring it down to that level, what's going to happen? Something that is abstract, we just cram it. You learn it in a way of grammar, and you're like, okay, regurgitation. So can you see now the gaps that are happening to this marginalized person who we want to bring into the profession as a fully fledged individual to deliver on the mandate of being a business professional? We want this person who will be agile, who will be a problem solver, and. But now, what is happening? They have to resort to their own survival instinct in order to make it happen. And then, as lecturers, we come in, we're like, you should be like this, should be like this, should be like this. But what was developed during this period of time? And then survival instinct says, I'll collaborate with others in order to make it. And then when you're collaborating with others, writing an exam online, then the integrity of that assessment that they submitted is questioned. And then we say, are you ethical? Because they were collaborating with others to write this exam. So, okay.
That's a difficult question.
It's a difficult question. Because for the marginalized, again, I go back to the point that education has to be holistic and not one-sided. So yes, the millennials can be saying we come from a digital background and we want everything to be online. But learning goes beyond just touching the screen. There is that human element that needs to be there in us building these professionals. And our marginalized individuals, or from where the communities will come from, or digital, yes, it's nice, but we still have to level up the playing field. So as much as we're always looking at equity all the time, but there's an equality that needs to start off with. So, lovely digital, study online, yara, 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 yara. But if you're not coming from the same level playing field, we are doing a disservice to those marginalized individuals. Thank you.
That's quite, yeah, I think someone is clapping. I think that quite, like, yeah, that's, yeah. Yeah, it's quite gut-wrenching, almost soul-wrenching, but it's reality, I suppose. Moses, I think from sure, I'm still stuck on what you've just said. It's, yeah, Moses, care to weigh in? Care to weigh in on the trajectory in terms of, I think especially, I think, like I said, your situation is a little bit more unique in terms of your target market is people that you would expect them to already have that level playing field. Then how does that look like for you? But obviously within that target market, you still have guys that are marginalized that may not know what another person may know based on how the community and the upbringing and everything else. So in an ODL institution, how does that look like?
Yeah, this is a difficult question. I agree. And going back to why UNISA was established, it was, in the first instance, targeted to accommodate the working class. But as time goes on, we now see ourselves accommodating a different type of students. The profile of our students has actually changed, and it has shifted from the working class to the more, I can say, full-time students, because we are accommodating, from the College of Accounting Sciences specifically, more than, I can say more than 60% of our students are between the ages of 18 and 29 years. So you can see it's younger generations. And looking at the reality of unemployment rate in our country, then you can also understand that most of those students are actually not working. So what my colleague has touched on here, it's actually very important, the fact that inequality is reality. And then going back to the profile of our students, most of our students, more than 50% of our students, they are NSFAS funded students. And yes, you might expect that from that NSFAS grant and allowance that they get, we might expect that our students should be able to buy the devices, the laptops that we are expecting them to use. But unfortunately, the reality is some of our students, or most of them who are from the disadvantaged families, the very same allowance that they get from NSFAS, they actually send it home to support their siblings and so forth. So as far as we expect our students to be having those devices, in reality, they don't have those devices. As far as we expect our students to log online and attend those online classes, unfortunately, when you look at the attendance register, then you find that most of our students are not there. And it's easy to blame them, to say, but you don't attend classes and that's why you fail. But in reality, our students are unable to keep up with the current situation. And also the training that we need to provide to our students, it goes back also to the availability of these devices, the use of the proctoring systems that we are applying at universities in order to ensure the integrity of our assessments. You'll find that our students, maybe, they failed to use these proctoring systems and they were not proctored. And then it boils down to the questioning of the integrity of our assessment. And the worst part is that if a student did not use the proctoring system, and then automatically it means the integrity is questioned. But what action again do you take against that student? And unfortunately, there has to be some disciplinary measures, and it affects the future of the very same student. So there are more disadvantages that are actually coming up from the use of these digital devices, or the access to these digital devices. And of course, yes, also as association to that is the availability of data. We know how expensive data is. And yes, you might provide the devices to some of the students, but where do they get the data? Some of the students, they might be able to log on and attend those classes, but halfway through the class, then the data get finished. The places that the students are coming from, the availability of network, and not forgetting also the ESCOM load shedding. Those are the realities that we are facing as the institutions. And unfortunately, it affects our students. So yeah, that's
That is so interesting. And I couldn't help think the next step for such a student, because I know as professional bodies, much of the time is spent on competency framework.
Correct.
What can we do and everything else. And I think maybe let me pose the question differently to you. Within that competency framework, and having heard what has been discussed here, then how, from an accounting perspective, because education is continual, we're trying to create lifelong learners, right? How then, as a professional body, do you now take into account how the marginalized are doing in that regard? And is there any form of capacitation that is, put forth for them to say, we recognize that you're here, and this is what we can do for you?
Yeah. In fact, I saw that, and this is a business opportunity for people running firms and must make money. I saw that only one of the big four, and it's one of my favorite big fours, I won't say which one, has seized the opportunity to develop programs for digital skills for remote working, remote learning, remote supervising, remote management, and I think they're going to consult with the other firms because they're the leader in that field. So from a digital skills point of view, if I just look at our institute, where we have a program which we call the Project Achiever program, which is a program, and she said to me that she's one of the products of Project Achiever, where we prepare our candidates to write the examinations. And like Eunice, my boss, I think is here, called us in when COVID happened, and he said, we're going to go online, we're not going to postpone our examinations like many of the other professional bodies did. We're going to do it online, and in fact, the service provider was at our offices for the first time in the 3 years that we've been using them, and they stopped by, and we went down memory lane, and we said to them, can you remember that when we appointed you to help us, how you had to help us to upload our questions on the online platform, and we had to do that within 2 weeks. And one of the things I did, and I'm a keen researcher and benchmarker, for those who know me, while they were looking at the digital platforms, I looked at what is best practice out there. And I saw that preparation is key in ensuring that even the marginalized or disadvantaged person can succeed. So we worked out in our Project Achiever classes, we looked at how can we have that personal connection with digital technology, not forgetting that the person or the name behind that name attendance list is a person. Call them, find out what's happening, and in fact we continue to stress that, to take a personal interest in the candidates preparing for the examinations. And then from a competency framework perspective, I think we were fortunate because we've also used that opportunity, and we have worked with what we call a coffee. For people who know CIPA would know that coffee is a center for future excellence. It's headed up by Professor Rashid Small. And the work of that center is one of the tasks of the center is to be futuristic and to look at competency frameworks for our designations. And I will not forget, because I was part of the panel, and the panel comprised of academics and people in business and in practice. And for over a year, they have worked on our new competency framework, which was approved. And they started with this discussion. Imagine business for in the next 15 years, what would you need? We started as simple as that. And as part of that framework, we've included digital skills, digital proficiency. In fact, our continuous professional development program requires from next year onwards for our members to, it will be compulsory to prove that you have done CPD in digital competency and digital skills. So it's included there, it's included in our framework, but what we've also included, because this is what COVID brought about, COVID taught us that you have to be resilient if you are going to make it, because life is tough. And so we've also incorporated skills such as emotional intelligence, communication, beyond digital skills. So from a competency framework, we build that in there. And then just to summarize from a practical point of view in our own training, we have realized that you cannot solely rely on online tools. You have to take a personal interest in your candidates or learners.
This is such an interesting response, and I couldn't help when you were talking, and I think this is the last part that I would like us to just talk about, capacitation. I'm just going to twist it a little bit. A lot of time we talk about capacitation of the candidate, the students. Thoughts on capacitation of the capacitator?
I love that. I love that one. And my thoughts on that, before we can capacitate, it is important for the individual to understand, or the capacitator, what is the intention behind what I say I am doing? What is the end goal? Because sometimes where the intention is just for me to move along, my vested interest in the capacitatee becomes misaligned. Because where I'm aligned to say, I see that I am preparing a future business professional who will be a leader in the space and who should be this type of person or graduate and professional. So therefore, it means that me as a capacitator, I need to recognize what is it that I also need in order to be able to support. So you find, I'll use an example. The profile of the student in terms of them being millennials, they are lovely, lovely individuals, but they're very sensitive. We come from hard stock, where how you are taught.
Yeah, correct.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
And whereas with them, they seek meaning. So now you need to connect with them at a level, or rather in a language that they hear. So someone comes in and says, "Ma'am, I'm not well." But it's so now as the capacitator, I need to now I find that I have had to learn some coaching skills. I have learned now I need to actually have a little bit of psychology.
Correct.
And then my empathy element needs to go up a bit. So as a capacitator, then who is my coach? Who is my psychologist in order for me to deliver? And I find that, unfortunately, that tends to not be thought of. So, and I go back to say, what is the intention? So capacitators coming into the space need to really connect to their why in order to see longevity in this space. And when you connect to your why, you connect to your meaningful work. You say, this is what's meaningful work. And also it means you connect to seeing opportunities that will make me a better capacitator. And therefore, you know that in a space like I love my Department of Accounting at UJ. Prof. Ben, I don't want to lie, I'm not that I'm selling, but he is that type of individual who looks at the individual and says, what do you need? How can I help you so that you can help the student? And therefore, for us, you find that mental wellness
Correct.
of us to fill our cup first,
Yeah.
so that overflow, that's where the students can swim in the overflow. So to close off,
Yeah.
the capacitators definitely need their own coach. They definitely need their own psychologist. You know, we definitely need those moments to say, when the students offload on me, how do I offload that which they bring in? Because we have to go back to our own families. We still have to go back and still continue the aluta continua with regards to the profession. So, yeah.
I see we have 6 minutes. Gentlemen, I'm not going to put you under pressure, but in 60 seconds, I just want to also hear from the floor. And I think, let me start with Moses. As a dean, you know, you're a dean, obviously. You are lead a number of people. Thoughts on capacitating the capacitator, and also throw in a thing for you as, who is capacitating you? Because it does have a ripple effect, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's about the capacitation, capacitator, and capacitatee. So, yeah, in terms of who is capacitating me, I would simply say, as the leader, I need to know what is it that I need to be capacitated on or with, so that I am able to request or make some demands from the management to say, this is what I need as the leader of the college. Not only for myself, of course, also for the people, the staff members that I lead, and drilling down to the students also. Of course, if we are not capacitated as management, as the staff members, there is no way that we will be in the position to capacitate the students. One thing that I just want to emphasize on, and I think my colleague has touched on, it's the emotional support, the mental support, taking into account what COVID has caused to our staff members. Working from home, we might take it lightly to say, when people are working at home or are working from home, it's easy. But believe you me, the load of work that is actually burdening our staff members when they are working from home, because they are unable to take time off. They are always in meetings and so forth. Whereas when you are working from office, at least when that hour that you take to travel to the office, and then you are able to take lunch and so forth, at least it makes a difference. But now when people are working from home, they are always on their computers, and that needs the staff members, they need to be supported in that instance. So, yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I'll ask this.
Thank you. I think I visited one of the firms yesterday when I arrived here, and I wanted to do a surprise visit to the firms, to the partners, and none of them partners or managers were the office. And I went to the trainee section, you know, where the audit manager normally sits and they have to watch the trainees, that they don't do anything but behind the computer because time is money. They were at the office. I think one of the things that we're grappling with as we accept that remote working is here to stay, we have to embrace it in one way or the other, hybrid, whatever we want to call it, it's here to stay. I think one of the things that we as firms or companies or professional bodies, we grapple with, how do we capacitate people to handle sensitive information if you work remotely, because you deal with client information. That's one area. I mentioned earlier on, I think there's a huge opportunity for digital training in remote working and learning. Time management within this virtual environment, my colleague alluded to it, that there's the blurred lines between personal and professional life. Time management courses will have to change because it's a new reality. There's capacity there. Capacitating staff within the latest and most effective accounting software packages. So there's a lot, and I mean, we can have a conference on this topic on its own, but there's a whole host of opportunity for us as universities over here, us as training organizations, because a large function of our role as education is to look at how do we capacitate our members, how do we capacitate our clients, how do we capacitate our staff within this new environment of remote working. Yeah.
Phew, you said a mouthful. I do apologize. We have 1 minute and 20 seconds. Can I take a question or comment? Oh.
Roving mic.
Madam President, can we? 4 minutes.
There's a question. Okay.
So I see a hand there, I see a hand there, and then 4, 5. Okay. Can you just quickly raise your hand up? On the side.
Thank you so much to the panel. In the interest of time, I'll get straight to the point. So, as a student, I think it's really important that I provide a student's perspective. And what I wanted to bring to the floor is that the way the qualifications are structured is so that information transfer that you get from the Big Four capacitates you to become a critical thinker. You must be able to sit down and actually evaluate the information you're given and actually bring it to life and make it useful for the questions that you actually receive.
Correct.
But we have a situation where for the past 2 to 3 years, students have adopted an approach of CPF, cram, pass, and forget.
Yeah, CPF.
Right? They've got into a phase where I'd rather learn to forget
Yeah.
than actually learn to
remember.
use it meaningfully once I go to PGDA or whichever program I decide to do afterwards. So, even though they've adopted the CPF, the factors which you've touched on, such as the digital divide and the lack of digital competencies, play a significant role in actually us adopting these methods of learning, right? So, I'm not sure if I've been able to properly link the question, but what I wanted to ask is, would it be possible for those charged with the information transfer to actually sit down and take into consideration the drastic shift that has taken place in the individuals coming into the accountancy stream and actually move the qualification in that direction? We're not saying compromise the quality, but actually look at the factors that these individuals have and as they come into the profession, link that standard with the information that you're trying to put forth. Thank you.
Hi, everyone.
Should we answer that first, or
Oh,
should
yeah, I was
we
going
go?
to ask whether.
Let's take three.
Okay.
Yeah, no, you can ask your question.
I can ask. Thank you very much. I sort of came in the middle of the conversation, but I'm putting dots together. Hopefully, I asked the right question. My name is Toriso Maredi, and I'm a trainee with this bank, ABASA. My question is, so I work remotely, like hybrid. Go to the office once a week. In my first year, I never went to the office. So that's the world of my work right now. And I hear that people from UNISA and UJ on the floor. And I want to ask what the schools are doing to prepare the learners for the type of work that I do now, so hybrid work or remote work, because I believe in practicing how you're gonna play. And then because I'm a black child, my sort of background, is we don't have proper network where I come from. We don't have, when load shedding hits, it's off, you can't work for the 2 hours or 4 hours. So I guess it's the same for the learners. So how are you guys embracing digital, but at the same time circumventing, my background as a black child? Because UNISA and UJ produces the most black accountants, so you guys would have the most impact. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Mine, I think it's going to be a step back a little bit. You spoke about first years where in 1 year they had 2 months experience of physical content. So my question is mostly on basic education. There is a question of the curriculum of commerce streams and basic education and the transition from basic education into higher education. And I think the institutes, professional institutes, are saying maths and English is what is critical for you to pursue accounting studies. And if we look into the numbers in basic education, you would realize that most people are doing maths and English are doing science streams, not necessarily accounting streams. So my question is, the first one is, what has been the observation with higher education institutions, as far as the intakes who are coming from science background, as well as those who are coming from accounting background? 2 is, what is it that can be done to look into the key problem, which is now making accounting as a subject irrelevant? I think year in, year out, when the results are out, we talk about the irrelevance of accounting. Accounting as a subject is being phased out in basic education, and there's a decline year in, year out. So what is it that can be done from a ABASA's perspective, from the higher education institutions, as well as professional bodies, to look into the curriculum the same way you are setting out competencies or the expectations of what a student should know by the end of their qualification, so that those who are doing basic education, they come in with some knowledge which it's more relevant for them to add onto that when they are at higher education. Thanks.
The panel, you can take the questions and then.
Panel?
I hope someone has been jotting down those questions.
Yeah. One is, how do you capacitate, or what is the institutions doing to cater for the black child in terms of, yes, from a digital perspective, but beyond?
Beyond, how do you circumvent the issues that are caused by my background?
Yeah.
If you don't mind, I'll take a stab. I'll start. What's your name? Toriso. Thank you so much for the question. And as you were talking, I was thinking, in reality, as an individual, human beings were meant to evolve. You are meant to use your background to make you more, to transcend, what is the end. As a place like UJ, for example, the Department of Accounting, we are there to try and support as best that we can. However, the onus is still on the individual to use what is out there given to them. So what I know for sure we have done in the Department of Accounting is that UJ being a residential university, it means that you have to be attending on a daily basis, physically, if I should say. Yeah? And then, yes, COVID meant that we cannot have face-to-face, but the least that we had to make sure is that there is Wi-Fi. So you are able to come into the university so that the infrastructure is there to give you access to the lecturers, even though it can be on video call and so forth. So the hybrid model that we ended up adopting in preparing you, because remember, it's about the resilience, it's about you having the ability to navigate. So yes, we are at the end of the day responsible to give you or teach you the academic knowledge, which you, at the end of the day, when you go to your employer, you are able to say, I have learned this, but how am I navigating? So you find, therefore, that by virtue of us saying we are available, but we have given you the infrastructure, we have said to you, we are there for you to engage with us. Even though it's online, we still maintain that in your accountability as a student, are you still applying integrity? So if we are saying this is the proctoring system that you have we capacitated you to say, have you learned how to do it? Do you stick to time management? Do you deliver? And so forth. Because at the end of the day, those are still qualities that you'll be required to do, regardless that you come from a particular background. So if you're coming from a disadvantaged background, being a black child, on our end, we were almost saying that make sure that the students can come to campus. At least the residences have to be open in order for you to be able to be there, so that the issue of infrastructure is not a challenge. But then at the end of the day, the lecturers themselves had to make themselves available for you, even though it's online. And we did a lot of interventions when it comes to getting industrial psychologists to actually help with, how do we build resilience, mental wellness, emotional wellness, and so forth. So it became a very holistic and very personalized type of intervention, and to say to the individual, if you have issues that we are not addressing, can you come to us so that we are able to assist you from? Because sometimes you cannot always just apply a blanket approach to each and every individual.
Yeah.
So we rely on you as a student to actually come in. So there were a lot more, should I say, let's feel the pulse kind of contact sessions that allowed us to prepare you, the students, as best as we can for the purposes of you being in the workplace, and with the hope that those interactions planted the seed into you becoming agile when you go to your employer. I hope I have covered that, yeah.
Thanks for that. Can I ask the Dean to take the science and noticing the difference between a student who came into an institution with a science background and an accounting background? What has your intake? And specifically for that, and now accounting, you don't really need it to do accounting,
Correct.
become accounting. It's more about maths, and maths and English.
Yeah.
Thoughts on that?
Thank you very much for the question. And I think it is very, very important to look at that matter. I'm saying this from UNISA point of view. we are actually having community engagement projects where we are visiting basic education, we are visiting schools. We do have projects in Limpopo, Soshanguve, Hammanskraal, and Eastern Cape. Now, what we've picked up from the time when these projects were established is that each and every year we experience some schools having to do away with accounting. The reduced number of learners who are taking accounting as the subject. And that is also seen in, if you look at the annual basic education report, examination report, you'll also realize that the number of students, the number of learners who are writing the accounting exams, it's also decreasing on annual basis. So it is important that we engage with the Department of Education to see to it that accounting does not fade away. Most importantly, that the possibility of a learner taking commercial or BCom accounting or so at the tertiary level without having done accounting at school, the possibilities are very less as compared to those that have done those accounting at schools. So that is what I think needs to be done. We need to collaborate with professional bodies. We need to collaborate with institutions to make sure that we, also with the Department of Basic Education, to make sure that this accounting subject does not fade away. And this also needs to be addressed from capacitation point of view that you have mentioned, our educators at basic level. Because the fact that we don't have learners who have interest in accounting, it might be the fact that they don't have qualified educators who can teach that accounting. You will find that only at a certain school, they just pick up an educator who is doing biology or is doing maths. They say, no, you can do EMS. And what it does to the learners, because the teacher cannot transfer that knowledge, and obviously he or she cannot also influence or the interest on those learners. So it is very important also to look at the capacitation of the educators at basic level. Thank you.
Thank you for that, guys. I think we've run over time. Thank you for the panelists. Thank you for allowing us to pick your brain on these matters. And thank you guys for entertaining this conversation. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Look at.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's give it one more time for Katla and the panel. So, very important thing, as they were talking, there was a bit of reflection on my side, and as I was going around the room and speaking to people, when we talk education, we mostly focus on undergrad. And to whoever is listening and to whoever is watching, I would want to challenge you to think about post-grad, what would be the issues. In high school, I think that question becomes very important. And also in some of the programs that we used to run as ABASA, how do we resuscitate those programs? Who do we need to talk to who used to lead those programs within ABASA so we can bring them back? But also at another level is that during our trainingship, so when you look at the articles that are offered or the workplace experience that's given, that's also education. That's practical education that we also need to look into. So when we take this discussion and the questions, let's stretch it a bit to then say, in the environment that I am in, how am I accommodating some of the issues that were raised here, and most importantly, as ABASA, what would you like ABASA to assist us, to assist you or your organization to get there? How do you want us to help you together? So thank you very much to the education. We will move on to the next panel, but before we do that, there's a video that needs to play, and then I'm going to hand over to Ukayas Tole to introduce his panel. You ready at the back? Nazo?
The ABASA president, past presidents, the board and the entire leadership of ABASA, conference delegates, all protocols observed. On behalf of SAICA, its leadership and members, I greet you and welcome you to the annual convention of ABASA. The theme for this convention could not be more appropriate: driving leadership excellence. Our country, and indeed our profession, need leadership more than ever before. As the accountancy profession, we find ourselves at a critical time in the history of South Africa. After the COVID-19 lockdowns, we facilitated the recovery of businesses as an industry. While some were saving lives, we were saving livelihoods. Currently, we are facing low growth, rising prices, unemployment, and thus social, economic, and political insecurity. This is compounded by the energy crisis our country faces. It may appear to be a bleak prospect. I believe the need for accountants and the value and assurance we provide has never been greater. It is for this reason that SAICA is convening an Economic Difference Makers Conference in Durban on 14 November 2022 to discuss what an economic recovery strategy for the country should be. I encourage you all to participate. As an industry and as a member bodies, and SAICA and ABASA and its members must drive the ability of business and our communities now, not just to survive, but to thrive. By fulfilling a positive role in the economy, not just from a competence but also a transformative perspective, we will further consolidate our value and relevance in the marketplace and thus continue to re-establish trust in business and the profession. Our collective opportunity has never been more required or more timely. So let us make the most of this opportunity and make a difference. Your conference is the ideal opportunity to direct how we can make a difference in South Africa from an economic and transformative perspective. So will the SAICA conference be. I therefore wish you all an enjoyable conference, and may this event bring purpose and direction to the undoubted impact we have in our chosen profession for the benefit of all South Africans. Thank you.
Good morning. We do have a slight problem. You were just clapping for the guy that is no longer on screen. Now you need to just clap for the guy that's here on stage. So let's start there. Thank you very much. My name is Kaya Sitole, and I have been brought here simply because we ran out of the budget before Trevor Noah could agree to a speaking fee. So you are stuck with me for the next hour or so. So please, lower your expectations. That's all I can say. We are going to be focusing on the question of the disruption of the profession, something that we've been seeing organically and then incrementally over the past couple of years. A lot of you would remember that when we started the year in 2020, all of you had New Year's resolutions. Some of you were planning on becoming millionaires. Some of you were planning on getting married. Some of you were planning on getting divorced, but none of you were planning for something called a lockdown. So it was a great lesson for everyone else that even the best laid plans of mice and men can sometimes go completely the wrong way around. Nevertheless, we all had to learn to adapt, and perhaps the greatest adaptation had to become institutional adaptations, as you may call them, where institutions that have been created for many, many years to do things in a particular way, that didn't know how to do things in any other way, suddenly didn't have an option but to adapt.
The accounting profession and the auditing profession in particular are notorious for refusing to change. So every single person insists that you must do a sample and that's how you must do an audit, in spite of the fact that computers can now do absolutely every single thing. Nevertheless, the adaptation was forced upon us, and 3 individuals are going to take us through what they learned through that particular process, what they observed, and more importantly, how their institutions responded to those particular disruptions. There are not just 3 panelists. There are sort of 3 superstars. So what you do with superstars is that when they walk into a room, you're supposed to stand, but you guys didn't do that, so I'll forgive you for that. But when they do run up to the stage, you're supposed to clap. And when you clap, you must remember that these are the Oscars of the professional accounting profession. So every single person who's in here is a superstar, especially me. So please be aware that you must acknowledge them. I'm going to start with Dariro Motidzwa, who is, of course, the Regional Vice President of the Association of International Certified Professional Accountants. And, of course, the very first thing that we're going to ask him is whether she can consider getting a shorter name for her institution. Dariro. Our next panelist is someone who is brave because very few people want to be seen on stage with their own stalker. So I started stalking her many years ago when she was still at KPMG because she had money and I didn't. And I needed her money in order to be able to get some people through the University of KwaZulu-Natal. And for some odd reason, I don't know what was wrong with her, she kept saying yes whenever I said I need more money. That is Tantaswa Fubu, who is now, of course, the head of Human Capital and Transformation at Bala World. Our next panelist is someone who has a very, very unique take on life. What makes this unique take on life is that I can tell you for now that I'm very, very particular with personal space. I don't like being crowded. I don't like being compressed. However, this poor human being has had to share his personal space from the moment he was conceived because guess what? He's a twin. And that is Dario Grassini, who is, of course, a certified professional accountant. And the one thing that he and his twin brother did is that they tried to separate themselves. So they tried to be different. So when one decided to be a traditional CASA, the other one said, I also want to be an accountant, but I don't want to be known as the twin brother who's also CASA. So I'm going to be a twin brother who's an accountant, but with a different designation. All semantics, isn't it? But anyway, Dario Grassini is the co-founder of Sapro, who are, of course, our main sponsors for this particular panel. Thank you very much and welcome to my panelists. Okay, so there is a hope that load shedding does not happen. So I don't live in a country where load shedding happens. So whenever load shedding is a thing, I tend to run away. So I don't know how to react when load shedding happens. I'm going to be guided by you guys who know these things much better. But of course, when you talk about those unexpected disruptions, the greatest one did happen in the beginning of 2020 when suddenly the world changed as we knew it. And those of you that had said that this is what I do and this is how I do it were then asked very difficult questions about, well, how are you going to do it now that you cannot drag people to the office, now that you cannot force people to tick boxes and do stock counts? You guys still do stock counts? Dear God, auditing profession needs to adapt. But I'd like you just to take us through the key lessons that you learned during that very difficult transition stage. I think obviously by now everybody sort of figured out how to do things, but that transition, how was it? We'll start with you, Dario.
It was a difficult transition. Admittedly, we had a bit of a different situation. We had about 75 South Africans working for us in the United States across 17 different locations. And when the pandemic hit, some of our clients that we had deployed them to, like, sorry, we can't host them anymore because we've got to let go of our own people. So what we did was we consolidated them from these 17 locations into Charlotte, North Carolina, where the cases were a lot fewer. And we housed them for the next 2 months to make sure that they were safe and protected and before we could get them home safely. And during that time, our business model needed to change quite drastically. So we went from being on-site, face-to-face with our clients around the US to working remotely from Airbnbs in this city. And then fortunately, we were able to experiment with some of our clients where when we were able to charter a flight to get our people home safely, we could have them work remotely from South Africa. And that really helped us pivot our business from being onshore to offshore, which was something that we wanted to do from the beginning when Greg and I started the company, to really help send as much work back to South Africa, to really showcase the talent that we have here. And having the people working locally in South Africa, how did we support them in order to ensure that we overcome certain challenges, which are the time zone differences, the load shedding, communication challenges, etc. And what were the operational things we had to put in place to take care of load shedding, and help facilitate people still being able to work internationally, and showcasing the amazing talent that we have and giving them the support that they needed to be successful.
Yeah, thank you. Dante, I mean, obviously, given the fact that your entire business model is based on mobility and logistics, I'm keen to hear your perspectives on that transition.
Thanks, Kaya. Firstly, I just want to say it was a tough time for us. Specifically, I think a tough time for leaders. You know, as leaders, we have always said, you know, we treat our people fairly, we do this and we do that. And when COVID hit us, it really called on us to do exactly that which we said and we had been saying we're doing for our people. And one of those things was being individual with a person, and not treating people as, you know, a whole bunch, and understanding what they need. I think Bonso talked a lot about the wellness, and we had to focus on that and ensure that our people are well. From a business point of view, maybe to make your question even more interesting. So what had happened with us, we were in the middle of restructuring the business, and we had just appointed Ramasela as the new CEO of the Avis Rental and Fleet, and she had no prior automotive experience. And I think that helped, actually, that she didn't. Because as soon as there was a lockdown, international tourists and business people not there. So Avis, what can Avis do? It moves people, and if people are not moving, what does it do? However, we had leadership that was able to think beyond what the business was created for initially, and to say, how then do we use the assets that we have in this current period and generate enough return on invested capital such that this business doesn't go under? And also look at which industries could they tap into, cannibalize, and disturb. So, you know, we've got Uber Eats. Suddenly you had Avis cars delivering food, and delivering food because we went and we spoke to individual franchises and owners of restaurants, and we became their preferred deliverer. And we started doing that thing. So it needed us to start thinking differently, and ensure that the business is sustained. One of the things, though, that was not great that we had to go through was to retrench most of our people. My lesson from that, Kaya, was because, you know, I tell the story, we used to have group exco sessions or meetings twice a day, every day of a week. So in 5 days, we had 10 exco meetings, one at 10, one at 5, and the variables were changing all the time. What I decided to do is to take my team, those people who report to me, which I had about 18 at that moment from corporate office. After each and every exco meeting, I would call my team and I would brief them on what we're talking about, the decisions that we want to take as the leadership, and ask them for their input. By the time, I think it was 4 weeks down the line, where we got to the difficult decision of having to retrench people, when I went back to my team and I said, guys, this is where we're at, they all said, we're not surprised, we saw it coming. And the lesson for me there was that as leaders, we need to really move away from the notion that there's some information that's protected that you cannot share with the professionals and adults that you bring into the organization. Rather share openly and honestly so that people are able to take their own decisions, so that people are not surprised, so that people know the why to what you're doing.
Important lessons. Dariro, I imagine a multi-jurisdictional business like yours had even greater challenges to deal with.
Yes, we did. I'll give you a short name for our business. It's AICP and SIMA.
Okay, AICP and SIMA. We're working, we're making progress.
Okay, so I'm looking after the Africa business, but obviously feeding into the global business. One of the key lessons as an association that we learned was plans that haven't been tested will not go according to the plan. And we didn't have time to test those plans anyway. So, but the strength of the association made us able to quickly serve our members, because we need to keep them engaged. And that was all enabled by technology and our digital strategy. We also had to keep the student engaged and have their exams as per schedule. So we quickly moved all our exams to digital. And the transition was a little bit seamless from outside the organization in terms of our members and students. But internally, the narrative is a bit different, because I think we also learned a hard lesson that any strategy or any change is emotional. It's not strategic, it's not fancy, it just boils down to emotions. And how do we deal with emotions of people who are feeling uncertain, kind of demotivated as well, because they don't know the direction that the association is going to take. Everyone is talking about costs, but there's still work to be done. And so our change within our organization was based on the fact that this is going to be emotional. And the support was given from a human point of view. We always plan for crises where we say, what if we don't get this resource? What if our IT fails? What if this? And then we have our disaster recovery sites. No one ever thought somebody's home is an international business's disaster recovery site. So that was a big challenge. Though on the face we were serving our members and students and saying, let's go. But the people behind it really went through a tough time. But we used the strength of knowledge that it's human beings that drive a business that made us sustainable until now. We have had quite some bumps where you can see things are not working, but overall it is working for that reason. And as a challenge to everyone who's leading a business, really any change is emotional. There is no hard physical or intellectual or whatever. Every change is emotional, and we need to deal with it from that level.
You mentioned a very important change in relation to the assessments that you had to do, where suddenly everything had to go digital. And I imagine that the majority of the people in this room, with perhaps a couple of people at the back, would say to you that we've been digital for a very long time as individuals. Why is it that institutions like yours didn't actually go the digital route up until this disruption happened? Because suddenly, whether it was higher education institutions, as Boniso was talking about, it suddenly became like, oh, let's now do it. And then everyone's like, but what were you waiting for?
So every risk, when we look, I also have a risk background. Every risk, when you look at it, you prioritize it based on your subjectivity. If something is unlikely to happen, you put it at the back burner, because you're thinking, you know what, it's a risk, we know we've got the infrastructure, but until it shows signs that it will materialize, we will stay here. That's what really happened. And it's a lesson that whatever we put on our risk registers is something that can impact the business. Let's really pay attention to it, because whatever is happening tomorrow is a total new world. And we just need to be ready. So to just answer your question in short, it was more of saying, yeah, we know this can happen, but you know, it might not. Or if it does, it's going to be an epidemic, not a pandemic, you know, whatever. So that's how it's really us as leaders being a little bit too relaxed, I think.
Yeah. Tanti, the fundamental way in which we've learned to manage human capital and human resources is primarily through interactions, where people can come in and be told that you messed up here and to be disciplined, and that physical interaction sort of creates that information flow that enables immediate feedback and, you know, the ability to then build those particular relationships. Now, suddenly in a year where you literally could go without seeing your team for months on end and still have to manage their outcomes and manage their expectations, how do you then pivot around that to say, well, actually, even if I can't see you, this is what I still need you to deal with, particularly for people that are entering the business at that point in time?
So, Kaya, firstly, I just want to say how you have described the current, the status quo is really aspirational. It doesn't happen like that. You know, the immediate feedback, those things don't happen. People don't get that, which is part of the problem. Because if we're moving from how you have described it, we probably would have a sense of how then do we pivot upwards to get to a point where we can still get the interaction with the people when they're off-site. And hence, I think other people are still holding on and wanting people to come back to the offices. However, assuming that what you said was the standard, I believe that at the core of being at work, at the core of working, it's all about relationships. It goes back to what you said, the emotions, right? So when we have leaders who understand that, then we will have leaders and organizations who start to look at people as people and not as numbers and employee numbers, personnel numbers when you are from the 1950s. So we need to be engaging with the people. So someone joins Kaya while we were on lockdown, and there was no one to come and say, hello, this is your desk and whatever. You know what we did as accountants and auditors? We first were doing substantive work and we're writing with the pens. And when we had to pivot and go the systems auditing, we needed to think, what were we trying to do here? What were the risks that we're trying to mitigate? So how do we automate those? We needed to use almost the same type of thinking to say, if I wanted someone to have this experience, because being at the workplace is about the human experience. If I want someone to have this experience, if I want someone to feel connected to this brand, what is it that I can do? And now, how is it that I can do it outside of meeting that person? Some of the things that we did, and I think we were even in the throes of integrating a new business, because if you remember, we bought the Tonga Starch business, which is now Ingrain. So it was about saying, firstly, let's get people buddies. You know, go back to basics. Get people buddies and ensure that for each person there is a buddy. But not just the people that we're integrating, but people who were there already, because the mental wellness really reared its ugly head. So we needed to have someone, if we're buddies, Kaya, that every day I can check up on you, you can check up on me, and we can have a feeling about where we are from a mental wellness point of view. And if there was an intervention that was required, then the other person would be able to escalate and ensure that you get, you know, that. Secondly, the trust became an issue. Because generally you have to look at the employee engagement surveys, and you'll see that where organizations fall, it's on the trust between leadership and the people. So you needed leaders to reframe and rewire their thinking, their, you know, and their perception of people. And it's quite interesting because behavioral scientists have said this a long time ago, that positive reinforcement works better than the stick. So we needed, as leaders, to start reinforcing positively. We needed to start saying to people, you know, I know you can do this, and giving people that confidence that one, they can do it, but two, that we know that they can do it. Thirdly, we needed to give people the space to say, if for any reason there's something that distracts you from doing this, and when you can see it, please talk up so that we do not get to a crunch time and now suddenly we're all looking at you and we're saying you are a non-performer, while there was a true reason why you could not perform. But that required us, Kaya, to say, I am dealing with Kaya because he is Kaya. We needed to forget about the policies. I find HR policies so archaic, so non-developmental, non-empowering. And we needed to take the policies aside and say, at this point in time, when I'm dealing with this person and they presenting like this, what is the most humane, what is the most kind thing to do with and for this person at this point in time? And that's how you build the emotional attachment with people.
Yeah. Dario, I'm going to give you 4 numbers. It's not my banking detail. I'll give that to you later. The numbers are 3, 23, 75, 350. Talk me through how, in spite of the fact that you are obviously dealing in a client-facing business, clients are folding left, right, and center, you are still able to grow your workforce.
I think it comes down to the quality of the people and their ambitions, their motivations, and the strength of character that we have. Obviously, as a talent augmentation business, we always got to put our best foot forward in order to deliver an exceptional experience for our clients. And if we don't do that, we won't be able to create more and more opportunities for our people. So it's super critical for us to be able to showcase the amazing talent that we have and people that can go into the field and really help alleviate the stress and the pressure and the burnout that our clients have, because they're also going through busy seasons. Their folks are also having wellness issues, and supporting them to enable them to provide their folks with super subs, let's call it that can really help them during their peak periods, and also help them go after growth opportunities. So the more quality we can provide to our clients, the better they can deliver for their people and their clients, and that in itself helps open up more opportunities for our people and lay the pathways for more and more opportunities down the line. So that's a critical component for our business as a premium service provider, is really having the fantastic talent pool and having the heritage in South Africa, knowing the quality of the chartered accountants and the accountants here from different backgrounds. It's just amazing being in a position to be able to showcase what South Africa can bring to the world. And we really want to be able to help educate the world on the amazing talent that we have, so that we can send as much work back home as possible to create as much opportunities for as many people in South Africa to think outside of our borders in order to help grow the economy and showcase the amazing accounting backgrounds that we have that can really help shape the future of the profession and help transform and help create that transparency and accountability that provides that trust in the financial market. So it comes down to that quality that we can showcase. And for SAPRO, we heavily invested in our people. We, like you guys, treat our people as clients. We know they're our number one assets. So we're always looking after their best interests at heart. And our number one principle is what is best for our people. And every decision that we make is around that, no matter how difficult it is or how much it hits our bottom line. It's what is best for our people. And they see that investment, they see that care, and they see that just the effort that we put in to look after them. And through that, they're able to go into the field and deliver exceptional service to our folks, knowing that they've got the safety and the security through a company that cares for them. They get the international experience that helps them with their growth. And through that, they're able to really develop into international superstars that really help put South Africa on the map.
For a very long time, the idea of international exposure was a bit of a lottery. If you were the one that was chosen within your firm to go on that secondment, good for you. But even that secondment was a matter of months rather than a matter of years. How have you tried to sort of make that more fundamental and more pervasive compared to the experience that we had? I mean, I only did a secondment for 3 months in the coldest place I've ever been to, called Dublin, and I haven't been there since, because no one in their right mind goes back to Dublin for anything.
You're lucky. I was talking to someone yesterday who was in Milwaukee.
Oh, dear God.
That's cold. But yeah, a secondment is almost like a rite of passage for accountants, and it's part of why people join the profession, is to get that international exposure, to develop as well as they can globally, and be able to bring that knowledge back home, that cross-cultural experience that really opens your eyes to what's out there, expands your horizons, and develops your networks, so that you become more of a holistic person and you're not just focused on the local aspects. So traditionally it's always been like a 3 to 4 month opportunity, but we've evolved to try to make it a global rotational development program where you can get experience in the US, UK, Europe, Australia, and New Zealand, either on site or from your home, so you don't have to be away from your family depending on your personal situation, and create longevity within your career with SAPRA, where you don't see it as a temporary stop before you try to find a position in a finance manager role. Like, we really want to have this ecosystem where people have the opportunity to work on sites in foreign countries or work from their home, work in public accounting or in corporate accounting, work internally with SAPRA to develop skills in other areas. Like, we've got a bunch of people that are external auditors that are now helping our marketing team, so they're learning new things. So really what we're creating is a growth and value add journey where people have this ecosystem that goes beyond just the 3 month, but can be up to 3 years or the entire career. Because what we want to do ultimately is create a legacy where people look back at their times with SAPRA and say, wow, this had such a meaningful impact on my life, the people around me, the community around me. And we don't want to just be a one-stop, thank you, goodbye. We want people to have that security where they know they've got a company with their best interests, where they can build a career with us.
Yeah. Taredo, one of the things that young people tend to worry about is that they're concerned that the old people who qualified when there were only 3 accounting standards in particular probably haven't kept up with the different changes. So of course, one of your key KPIs is the ongoing professional development of the many members that you have. And I imagine that for those people of a certain age who would otherwise not want to get into a computer and do particular things, they haven't had much of a choice. But talk us through what has been the change in how you're still able to enable continued professional development of your members under very difficult circumstances, particularly during the height of the pandemic, and obviously what you've decided to maintain as the ongoing pathways for new learning.
Okay. So I'll go back to, I think, 2017, before I even joined the association. So the association almost probably time traveled and changed the curriculum to match the future. So when we were developing it, okay, I'm now part of the organization. When we were developing it, we brought to prominence things like digital strategy, sustainability reporting, also with a bit of integrated reporting is related. We also brought to the fore things like business analytics and storytelling from data to make it part of the curriculum. But then it was outside the curriculum, it was still as a professional development course outside the main. And come 2019, that was included in the syllabus. So we already have our old members coming up to speed with their CPD on emerging trends before it is part of the syllabus. Then it became part of the syllabus. Our new students and members are going through that same syllabus and getting upskilled in that way. And in terms of CPD, our CPD is more of the forerunner into the future. So when you do your scenario planning and see where are we going, it first starts there. Then when it's picks traction and has input from stakeholders, people who've gone through those courses, it graduates into the curriculum. And as we speak, we are also doing our Future of Finance second edition, informing what the nature of the future accountant would be. And we do not leave our old members outside. That's why we still have them with us, because they still feel we are relevant. So that's how we deal with continuous education. However, what is more important that might not show in our CPD is the importance of a mindset. So you can have as much info. Okay, we all have access to a lot of information. It's not an AICPA SIMA thing. There is a lot of information, some good, some bad, you sift on your own. But if there is no mindset of continuous development, it's just wasteful investment anyways, because no one is looking at it. So that's the focus. When we have engagements with our members and students, when we have engagements with the people that we collaborate with, universities, tuition providers, and the thing that we stress is let's work on the mindset first before we invest in so many things that don't give a return. So that's the stance of the association and many other organizations. I don't think it's unique to us. It's all about the mindset. Let me just sneak in something. I saw the Africa Union leader, right now I think it's President Kagame. He says the same thing. We have a lot of money and resources in Africa, but what we don't have is the mindset. So that mindset is the focus of any CPD or any learning or whatever it achieves, and that's what we need to focus on as leaders, changing the mindset of our people.
Yeah. May I just check, is Kanta in the room?
Yes.
I'd like to hear from her. I mean, for SAIPA, obviously, I imagine similar changes have had to materialize in the past couple of years. Professional development is something that I can confess. A lot of people just go onto the website and they say that they've done it. And most institutions don't actually have a way of evaluating whether that has been done. Talk us through SAIPA's perspectives.
Do we have a microphone?
Yeah.
Thanks, Kaya. You probably saw me on my phone. Good morning, everybody, if it's still morning. So yes, we followed a very similar trend to everything I've been listening to this morning. And I think there isn't, no one person can take an award for what we had to do in that time. And if I look at what we're done together with our CE, and actually it's the CE who led us very, very valiantly through that time, it was a lot to do with people. It was a lot to do with listening to what was on the ground and implementing as best as we can to keep the institute going. In our case, we were very lucky that we transitioned, that transition you spoke about, digitization and digitalization was already in play. And so when we heard of this lockdown, our plans went into overdrive. And so we almost instantaneously went digital. And it was a plan that was in place from about a year before that. So we transitioned well, we proctored well in exams, as you heard earlier from Carl Smith. We have an app that takes care of our members. But more than that, I think we became a closer family. So what I've been hearing and the resounding sort of message is that you take care of your people. We became much more people focused. And so everything, whether it was lockdown, KZN riots, people not understanding TERS, you know, something as simple as that, the camaraderie and the companionship almost of people walking alongside each other to get through this was something that was really seen from a SAIPA level.
All right.
So, and for that, I just want to, I want to acknowledge my CEO who's next to me.
Oh, I should have been the CEO.
And he
Thank you,
can
Mr.
stand,
Daniels. Yeah.
Because Mr. Daniels is the doyen of the accountancy profession, and he's done SAIPA proud in terms of everything he has done for SAIPA locally on the continent and internationally. Thank you for the shout out.
Thank you, and the great transition. Dante, through the past 2 decades, universities have pretended that they're preparing graduates for the workplace, only for everyone that's in the workplace to say, no, we need to do an induction because you guys don't know what you're doing. That's just been the way the system works. People come from different places. They are all trying to migrate into understanding a singular institution that they're coming into. And I imagine that in this particular period, in the past 4 years, when students have not even had the benefit of what little they were getting from the universities before they went into the workplace, that gap probably has widened. What has that then created as the new demands on a business trying to onboard people coming from the university environment?
So Kaya, personally I think that universities are there, or should be there, to teach people how to think, more than anything else. That you end up with a degree called BCom Accounting or BA, whatever, it should be neither here nor there nor here. Because what we're finding is we have degreed people and less educated and thinking people. And I think that is a question that needs to be put solely back to the universities. Maybe that session that was here should have
don't run away.
They should have been behind us. But with that, what I've learned is, as organizations that hire the people from the universities, we need to start hiring people and matching them to their passion, instead of hiring and matching people to their education and experience, because that doesn't work. You need someone who is excited enough about what it is that they are doing, what it is that they are offering, what is the value that they are bringing to this organization, such that you do not have to ask them to do anything. We need people who are totally passionate, who really can see the strategy of the organization and see themselves in translating that strategy into results. And if we're gonna depend on just the certification, it ain't gonna happen. We need, as corporates, as employers, we need to go back to the universities and see our role as good corporate citizens, that it is our mess to fix. That universities by themselves, and unfortunately government by itself, they cannot fix this thing. And if we are going to be sustainable into the future as organizations, as companies, we need to go back and invest in the people that are going to be the employees and the leaders of the future. I think corporates, we truly love saying we are good corporate citizens, but we need to ask ourselves the question, are we truly good or great corporate citizens? And what does it take, therefore, for us to be that? And it has to take us looking at the whole ecosystem and saying, if I'm getting this graduate and they are not ready, what is it then that instead of just doing the induction, Kai, which is at best a week, and you cannot reverse, we know this, you cannot reverse sustained incorrectness of 3-5 years over a week. It doesn't happen, it's not possible. How do we go back and take that money and invest before the damage is done, such that the people that come out of universities are ready for work? But then, Kaya, when we do that, we have to go back and say, but the people who come into universities, they come back at unequal footing, some are already damaged. So what's our role then in the primary education sphere? And not just having the CSI budget which is a 0.03% of our net profit after tax. But being totally invested in this country and understanding that for us as this country to make it economically, all of us need to make it. Otherwise, the 2 weeks in July that we saw and we all talk about and we're traumatized, it's not going to be 2 weeks. It's not going to be in Johannesburg or Gauteng or KZN. It's going to be the whole year, right through and everywhere. If we do not wake up as corporates of this country and understand what is the real call, we all must just perish, I think.
Sure. Now I'm scared. Kada from ACCA, I actually want to hear from ACCA how all of this has actually impacted your organization, because I think one of the tension points that we've discovered over the past couple of years is that we've all been trained in particular pathways, we've all understood curriculums to be defined in a particularly linear way. And of course, if you're going to vouch for my competence as your member, one of the things that you want me to do is to prove that I've made your own standards. Now, suddenly, the standards are not what you thought they were going to be. They're not assessed the way that you thought they were going to be. What have been the big learning points for ACCA over the past 3 years?
Thanks, Kaya. And thanks for giving me this opportunity to speak. We did a study in 2008. It's called The Future of the Professional Accountant. In that study, we went around the globe, we spoke to employers, universities, and we asked them, what kind of accountant do you want to produce for the future? So we came up with what we call the professional quotients. One of them was emotional intelligence. One of them was digital. One of them was business acumen. One of them was also stakeholder management. Remember, accountants have been inward looking. We don't look at ourselves as we deal with stakeholders inside, internal, and external in the organization. So we also looked, how do you manage relationships with others as well? So we looked at those aspects as well. But we also looked at things like vision, being visionary, thinking about the future, seeing around the corner, okay, not being a prophet, but anticipating what the future is. And then we also looked at problem solving. I think it's discussed a lot more about that every organization employs you because they've got a problem and they need to solve that problem. So we also looked at that as well. And then we incorporated that in the syllabus. So we took the stand that CIMA did, where we use case studies a lot, because case studies tend to simulate some of these aspects. You cannot teach them in a classroom from using a theoretical model. So we tended to have become more scenario-based, more simulated in our education. But what has happened, as you've spoken, is that when we get those that come from universities, and then for them to switch, to change to a scenario case study sort of teaching, there is a big gap that we have in that aspect. So the things that also CIMA have done about pre-SIM, where you give the case study upfront, so that the students get to see the case study, some aspects of the case study. So that's one thing that we have also adopted. The other thing that we have adopted is simulation as well. So we're going towards simulation of certain subjects, like auditing. We've got lowest pass rates in the auditing subjects. So we're going towards a simulation, where students will be able to learn by simulation as well. Because if you read about Gen Z, what they say is they are visual. They learn by visualizing something. They don't learn by somebody standing up front and teaching them something. So those are some of the aspects that we've done from the ACC, and those are the learnings as well. And the other thing we learned is exams. Our exams were center-based. Now we've gone what we call remote exams, where you can take exams from your office, from your home as well. That's another aspect that we also learned. So we accelerated that technology as well, because exams are the key thing that we do as professional body. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Dario, you have to hire all of us, regardless of where we come from and whatever skills we've learned. And obviously, given the fact that the past couple of years have been disruptive for so many people on a personal level, and also trying to adapt into very unusual workspaces, what have you picked up as perhaps a couple of key significant changes that have forced you as a business to adapt, in spite of the model that you had come up with many years ago that said, look, if this is what people have experienced and this is how people see the system, this is what we need to do as SAPRO in order to meet them halfway?
It's a very good question. So identifying where some of the gaps are in order to ensure that our people are able to perform in the field. Is that what you're asking? So for us, we're trying to build international superstars. And we're trying to assess how do we help elevate people to have a career that can transcend what they're used to. And some of the things that we've noticed along the journey is, like Terero brought up, is your mindset. And people coming from South Africa or Southern Africa are sometimes thinking that they're not as good as accountants or people in the rest of the world. So it's helping people break that mold and realize that they are, if not even better. So our integration and our orientation is about breaking that mold, is about helping them to realize the strengths in their personality, in their integrity, in their professional skepticism, and their technical skills, and how on a global stage that they can perform even better than other internationals. That's the one thing, is the mindset. And then how do you start interacting with people in different environments? How do you coach them to communicate with executives in foreign countries and go and interview a CEO and ask him about all the risks of his businesses, etc. So communication is super important, and that's part of our coaching, is how do you integrate yourself into a foreign environment where you're coming in as a consultant to be an auditor, and everybody knows nobody likes auditors. So how do you win over people in this foreign country as an auditor? So coming in there with the mindset of adding value, we're here to help you solve your problems and make your lives easier. And how do we coach people to be able to seamlessly transition into an international world and add value from day one, or some of the things that we build into our training program.
So you love the idea of coaching. Is that because you almost lost it to the PSL?
I wish. Maybe it would have been in the World Cup. But
IX Cape Town many years ago. Don't ask me how I know these things. I'd like to take a couple of questions from the floor. We'll start with 3, and it's going to be gold, silver, and bronze, because sports is how we do this thing. So 3 questions from the floor, please. As one from that side, from the guy that is very, very ungovernable, John T. And then there's one from the front here. And the left wingers are very quiet. This is the wrong side of Parliament by the looks of things, which is quite ironic because it's the only side of the room that has at least, I can see 3 politicians sitting this side already. So, oh, there's another question from the right wingers. Okay, we'll take those 3.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you to ABASA for getting value for money, getting Kaya instead of Trevor Noah.
Wow.
Was Trevor available?
I think I'm going to ask Mamfubu a question. So you mentioned that in passing about getting buddies to help in transitions and all that. And it takes me back to something I'm passionate about, which is mentoring. So I think my question is, in such a space where there's constant changes, and I'm going to link it to a question that was raised yesterday about succession. Don't you think in these environments where you're people-centric and people come and go, mentoring becomes an important thing that needs to be there, and it's not something that like happens from time to time where for 1 week it's a conference and maybe mentoring happens there, or for example, when you were briefing your team, I felt like that was like mentoring in place. You know, because you kind of guided your team to where the outcome is going. So as corporate, do you think that it's important that you guys invest in such, or it's just better to outsource and have like a training program every now and then?
All right, thank you. To the front.
Thank you very much. I'm Gobert Timothy from Limpopo. So my first question is, as this is basically about the disruptor in the profession, now the main issue or the main factor that we are looking for is money, right? And if you can check in terms of sustainability, if we have got 2 people and we ask them the reason to stay, it will be money. So our profession now is faced with challenge because now we're losing many professions because of money. If the person is accountant and they have to choose to be sitting at the mine doing nothing and continue to be accountant and the money is better that side, the person will choose staying and doing nothing because of money. How is the people who are staying there managing the issue of money? Are we valuing our money or costing ourselves properly as accounting profession? That's number one. Number two is in terms of learning. We are saying in accounting profession we are resistant to change. People go to university and graduate and after they go to work. But now it's changed name is accounting science because it's more of actual doing than learning. How about during the training period, the person maybe study for 6 months and have practical for 6 months, like that for the duration of 3 years. In the 3 years, the person will have had practicals where they learned skills like ethics and how to manage clients. How are we incorporating that? Are we willing or considering change to incorporating the practical way of doing things than going to school for so long and now you have to unlearn whatever you did in school? For example, there's no client management. We'll talk about a deadline, but sometimes you request information and then you get information after 3 days, whereas your manager wants you to complete that working paper within a day. That thing you cannot learn in school. How is the corporate, is corporate willing to incorporate the learning process in studying period? That's the biggest question that I'm asking. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. And the last question from there in the middle. While the mic gets there, I can tell you a very fun fact that in the university calendar, we actually only have a 26-week calendar. Half the year, we're not doing anything in universities. 13 weeks in the first semester, 13 weeks in the second semester. So it's in that gap where people should be learning practical skills, but they don't.
I'm going to disagree because I'm an academic and I can tell you we're extremely busy on our side.
Too busy.
But yes, my question is with regards to disruption. Yes, we've had COVID, and obviously it was throwing the entire profession upside, in fact, every industry upside down. But what we are not taking account is the fourth industrial revolution and the impact of artificial intelligence and what that impact is going to have, especially in business. And I'd like to hear from the panel what is your thoughts on that. My second part goes towards our fellows, non-academic stats in commerce and industry. Now, I've noted that governing bodies are still assessing students on an old way, which is writing. How are we incorporating, or what is the partnership that you guys can put, or pressure that you can put on, for example, Psycho, Cyper, etc., to say, hey, you know what, how do we incorporate things like Excel, things that is quite needed in the assessment process? I don't think we're at the stage where we can say any longer that people need to go into an exam venue and write something for 5, 6, 7 hours. So that's the questions that I leave with you. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I'll start with you, Tariro, to address some of those questions and also your closing remarks, please.
Okay, so I'm just going to talk about the learning. I think I'll also piggyback from what you've said, Sister, that education helps you to learn how to think. Okay, and when you learn how to think and you get into a scenario, that's thinking muscle helps you to adapt. That's what we hope for everyone who's gone through the school education. However, there is scope for us to improve and collaborate more. I'll go back to the last panel. I think they spoke about there's a declined number of students who want to do accounting. I've experienced it with my own daughter, grade 8. I'm a chartered accountant and then a CIMA member as well. And I thought my daughter was wired that way, but she refused to do. She refused and she couldn't understand it because the textbook that she showed me for grade 8 is talking about a check. What do you write in the folio of the check? Wow. And she doesn't relate. So she said, Mommy, I know you're an accountant, I respect that, but this profession of yours doesn't make sense to me. So that's what's happening from when we get to introduce. No wonder the profession kind of looks like it's dying. So we need to obviously work together as stakeholders to try and bring up everyone to the accounting, to have that kind of mindset of the value of accounting. And then it will answer your question where people are saying, now we're looking for money and we're not looking for this. If you have the cultivated passion and we've matched the passion to what you want, like Sister Tanti has said, you will be able to say, okay, money above my passion. And it results in your own wellness and in your growth. And I don't think it's true that there is no money in accounting. I think there is money in accounting. You just have to have the right skills, the right attitude that propel you forward. That's the only part of the questions that I wanted to address. And my closing remark is, ABASA says black accountants of Southern Africa. Yes. So I'm coming from CIMA, AICPA and CIMA, and I had one young member who phoned me. He didn't even phone customer service. So he phoned me. I don't know where he got my cell phone number. And he says, are CIMA black accountants that need to be advanced? Yes, that was a question. And I said, yes. So how come we do not see you being active in ABASA or being recognized when you have ABASA? Because ABASA has become a flagship of black accountants. Why, when we talk about black accountants, we only talk about chartered accountants, we don't talk about business accountants, we don't talk about professional accountants, we don't talk about management accountants? I understand I understand the birth of ABASA is within the CA profession. But if we have to bring excitement back into accounting, we need to count all the black accountants that are across the different PAOs and make them know that they matter and they contribute to the growth of this of this profession and this industry. And they do supply also the big four, the big companies, and are recognized. We will always count failures in our progression within ABASA when you look at numbers and not look at them holistically. But they are really great successes from black accountants and other accountants also who are not black. The profession is progressing. That's my closing remark. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tanti?
Thank you very much, Kaya. Just to protect my Madam President, Linda Magona. She is one of the probably first presidents in ABASA who has understood exactly that call of yours. And she is the first president who, even in these functions that we have, she looks and she draws from everyone. That's why you are here. That's why we've got Saipa, we've got everyone. So I really do want to give kudos to you, Madam President, because you saw that and you acted on it. Regarding the question that was asked, and probably answer part of the other questions that were asked, Jody, the mentorship, the buddyship, the learning, it has to be lifelong. It can't be located within a specific time and period. You know, one of the greatest things for me that I learned from COVID is how interconnected we are as human beings. It doesn't matter where you are. So if you advance me in a funny way, you are advancing yourself. So who would not want to advance themselves by pulling up someone else, you know? This plane can only lift if the weakest of us is lifting up. So it's just the principle that we need to do that. Talking about the artificial reality learning, you know, all those nice things, virtual reality, I do believe, especially from a human capital point of view, from a talent point of view, that generally as organizations, we are so rich in data, and yet we are so poor in insights and execution. And it's something that we need to fix if we are to, get into the next phase of our development as individuals and as companies. To illustrate that, and how it is critical that we change the way we're thinking and how we need to disrupt ourselves so that we can be better. Think of someone who joins company A, and they're very clear sometimes, or they're not. They're clear that I want to be that specialist at the end of the day. I want to be that accountant that makes so much money, might not be here in this organization. I want to be that CEO. I believe that organizations that are gonna make it into the future are organizations that are gonna understand that as a single organization, you are unlikely to give that cradle to grave type of opportunities to a single person. But you're gonna need organizations that are gonna use that the data that they have and say, if we start Tandaswa here at Balo World and we develop her on this for 3 years, we need to be moving her on to Bidvest, which is our competitor, for the next 2 years or 3 years, because at Bidvest they are gonna get this type of skill and this will be in their progression. But if we're gonna be insular and isolated in our thinking and our planning as organizations, it is gonna cause our demise because we're not gonna develop, and the talent is totally different. Talent wants to be advanced. Talent wants to know that you are thinking about me and my needs, and therefore, goes back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Therefore, if you can fulfill my desires, then I'm able to give you what you want. Otherwise, it's not gonna help. And then be able to map out someone's career trajectory through different organizations and accept that they will get to a certain organization when that organization needs them and when they need it. So there's a sweet spot everywhere where they go. You will never have disengaged talent if we do that, because we're always exciting people, we're always engaging people, we're always seeing the value and gathering the value.
Yeah.
From a point of using the virtual reality and AI, I really do believe that if we were to think about it carefully and say, for someone to be successful in this role, what does it take? And study a whole lot of people. What were the attributes? Because if we do that, we will have almost a model that to be an amazing CFO, these are the different traits, and we have picked them up from different people. So use that now to hire people, because you want to set people up for success, right? And you hire people who really show that they've got at least, if you're a male, probably 50%. If you're a female, 80%, because males always believe that they're ready for any role, whether they're ready or not. And how then do you match, people with roles where you know that they are most likely to succeed? My closing statement, Kaya, is whatever we say, whatever we decide to do, decide not to do, whatever disruptions are coming up in the future, whether we're seeing them now or not, it all will boil down to the kind of leadership that we have. The kind of leadership that is humble enough to know that it doesn't know everything, doesn't have all the answers. A kind of leadership that's inclusive enough to bring in the diversity of the people that they have and truly understand the meaning of diversity and inclusion. Because it could be diverse, but if you're not including other people, then it doesn't work. The kind of leadership that seeks to see, hear, and validate people as people, and not as you started, when you started, look to just, beat people up because they've done incorrect things.
Okay.
But most importantly, a kind of leadership that is aware of the importance of failures for building success.
All right, thank you. Dario, your last word?
Lots to unpack here, but firstly, just wanted to thank Madam President for the opportunity to be here and amongst all the esteemed guests. From SAPRA's point of view, it comes down to our mission about building better futures for our people, our clients, and our global communities. And we're all one community here. And we realize that we can't do it alone. And from a mentorship perspective, we look at things kind of like, I'm not sure if I can use this word, a tribal aspect, where everybody from top to bottom is working to pull each other up. It's not that one-on-one relationship where you've got that pressure. You've got a community that's connected to one another to help each person through the different stages of their lives or their careers. So everybody's bringing something different to the table versus having that one-on-one pressure. From a money perspective, we're trying to bring as much work back to South Africa, and we really value our people. So we look to pay them above market in order to ensure that they feel like they're I mean, they've gone through this entire education, their credentials,
Can you hire that guy?
their board exams. Like, South Africans are amazing. Southern Africans are amazing, and we want to show the value that we have in them. So we want to treat them with respect and dignity and give them the opportunity to earn above local market, because in doing so, in providing that value to international markets, earning income and being permanently employed in their local markets, it's that invisible hand theory where they can spend the money around them. They can provide to their family, their communities, and that's uplifting. So our goal is to employ as many people with meaningful, sustainable, challenging, and worthwhile opportunities as we possibly can. We started with CAs coming out of SAICA, but they're opening the door for everybody else here as well. We want to work with SAIPA, we want to work with SEMA and the AICPA, we want to work with all of you, because from a strategic partnership perspective, I think we're all on the same page. We've all got the same mission, yes, building a better nation for South Africa and around us, so that we can uplift our people and our economy and just provide more and more opportunities. Like, I'm so proud to be South African and go out there in the market and promote who we are and what we're doing, because you can see it in the eyes of our clients around the world. They want to be involved in our mission. It's a social enterprise that's got the triple bottom line. So we're trying to look after whoever's coming through, so that we can give them the best lives, help them have compelling futures, and take care of them through training, through education, through hands-on practical experience. We want our people to be prepared for the future of finance individuals, where they've got that career trajectory where they can continuously grow within public accounting, in corporate, within companies, and getting exposure outside and getting developed on the technical sides, but also the artificial sides of things. So for us, it's a holistic approach where we look at our people's personal growth, we look at their well-being, we look at their adventure. So we want accounting to be fun, adventurous. We want to showcase the young talent coming through high schools, that a career in accounting, the financial literacy that you can get in this field is going to help you no matter where you go in life, and help them become aware of that, so that if they want to go be a marketing specialist or whatever else, start a business and be an entrepreneur, they can read a financial statement no matter where they are in the world and be able to add value to their communities, etc.
All right. Thank you very much to my three superstars. Unfortunately, we are out of time. But yeah, we need to get up to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Well done, President. Very nice. Wonderful job.
Just for the record, this is the only panel that had a former soccer player from the PSL here, and I'm not talking about myself, obviously.
Quick correction. I was only on the under-19 team of Ajax Cape Town. They didn't want me for the PSL.
You just had to get someone injured, man.
I thought about injuring Stephen Pienaar, but he was too valuable for the country.
Missed opportunities.
Thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's give it up for Kaya and the panel. So I just want to tell you something. Like when you're sitting here on stage, there's a timer there. So it's counting down, it's showing you. And from my phone, I can text there and say, Kaya, you can now stop asking difficult questions. So I see we've gone 8 minutes over. But thank you so much. That was quite deep, and a number of questions that have come up, that need us to reflect. How do we balance money and giving experience to people? Because that's going to be very, very important in advancing a professional accountant that can meet the professional standards. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to now say that we can go for a 5-minute leg stretch, and then we can be back at past to continue with panel number 3. We'll see you back at past. Thank you. Testing.
Mina la se popa de tota, so mana kan de tota, mata chika de tota mata chaka.
I'm Hungarian. You know, that's what they call me.
Wana wande wisangwa ninyenga Eni yome watateko Obenta usiba mundi wone Ni intona tapo Omene no pondo koro koro Munyamene masande Amuna pepe wona kame songo Timba tibalongo Amuna pepe wona kame songo Balongo Tileni so singi pe matui Ona bongo mundinge obi babona Manyaka malambo mabudu ke lambila kwanyi Satan one pen in a people know it Amuna pepe bola kama songo Timba tibalongo Amuna pepe bola kama songo Timba tibalongo Tileni so singi matui Bona bongo mundinge obi babona lao Manyaka malambo mabudu ke lambila kwanyi Satan one pen in a people know it Palmo singana Shake na joko joko Kosa na joko joko Shake na joko joko Kosa na joko joko One so the bakoko Bini lam lam to the bakoko Bisina lam lam to the bakoko Hey Shake na joko joko Kosa na joko joko Shake na joko joko
Ladies and gentlemen, am I live? Okay, thank you. ABASA family, if we can just settle down. There's a reason why we asked for some coffee and eats for you. It's about to get lit now, you know. Thank you very much. In the interest of time, we almost didn't start. I had a presidential moment. I lost my iPad. I found it. Wow, it's so inspiring to stand here and see how full this room is as we engage. The next topic, following education and following disruption and things that are very clear in terms of our sector. I decided it's important to bring in an element, I think, from my student days. I felt as leaders, we were grappling with as ABASA leaders. And because we deal with young people, and yesterday I was even asked why I'm so focused on the students, but it is also something where we are growing with this topic now. And even at our level, we need to start thinking about it. But really redefining the future of leadership in South Africa. And I say South Africa particularly because as accountants, we are generally seen to be in our own little bubble. We have our big standards and we look all professional and amazing. But what are we doing with that? And we are always we are not divorcing ourselves from the crisis in the country, but the question is, what are we doing about the crisis? So I've asked that these three amazing individuals who I'm going to call up to join me, and I've been quite deliberate in choosing people who are non-accountants, because I also want us to get the view of people outside of our sector around what are we doing and what they expect from us, and for us to engage from a leadership perspective and responding to where we are from a leadership perspective in the country. So I'm going to call up the first, I can't call him a politician anymore. This gentleman was known as political analyst, and then he was a political scientist, and I'm like, hey, you guys just create terms and you must just be like, yay, you know? But he is the head of policy and research with the Rivonia Circle. You know him from Power FM, and now he is on TV. We get to see his face. And I've asked him to join me, Ulukhona Mnguni, for this conversation around leadership. So, Put, if you can join me on stage. I've also then, appreciating the fact that ABASA as a black lobby group is also working with other sister organizations. This gentleman decided, despite my dad's history with the BMF, I'm going to step down as the head of leadership and thought leadership and advocacy. But he still plays a very critical role in research around transformation and very passionate about leadership development. So I'm going to call Umonde Lotndlovu to the stage to join me. Look at that walk. Hey! And then a fellow rose that is going to sit amongst these thorns. You will know her from a time with a certain political party, but she has subsequently looked at her purpose and where she can best serve it, and where she can best express her convictions. And Umbali, I've actually met her through the Young African Leadership Initiative, which we have both recently graduated from. And I thought from the conversations there, we felt that we had been given so much and we want to give back. And I thought in my space, I'd like to give back to ABASA, and I'd asked her to join me and support me in that. So Mbalintuli, please can you join me? So I didn't panic too much when I lost my iPad, because in as much as I scribbled things down, I think the topic today it doesn't even need talking points. We know that there's a crisis. We are asking, where's this country going? And as a sector, what are we doing, or what role do we play? So to kick it off, I'm going to pick on the guy who decided to wear the same color as me, and say, Lukhona, you very vocal from a political perspective, and analyzing a lot of what's happening in the country. And that analysis is not divorced from us here as accountants. When we talk about redefining the future of leadership in South Africa, and you look at what is happening in the accounting sector, and you look at the role of an ABASA as an advocacy group, when you tie those three things together, this topic, what does it say to you?
Well, first, thanks, Chawagazi, for inviting us to Cape Town. I nearly redirected to Durban yesterday for obvious reasons, but I thought it's very important to be here today. The biggest challenge that you have is that South Africans don't listen. So even after we are done today, most of the people in this room might not listen. It's been 14 years of trying to sound the alarm bell to South Africans that this country is in a political crisis. Yeah. And that political crisis will eventually materially affect everything that we have built in all sectors. The reason there are governments is because the founding fathers of the social contract believed that human beings left to their own devices are no different to animals who just wander. So you've got to harness them into a system, the polity, and you've got to give them rules and regulations and build institutions that create these possibilities for regulation. And in South Africa, unfortunately, since 1994 breakthrough, there was never a genuine investment in the building of these institutions. The ruling political class found it appropriate to expropriate the institutions for its own sake. Yeah. And so this is why I laugh when former President Thabo Mbeki says last weekend, the ANC is passing the electoral amendment bill in parliament to preserve the possibility of the ANC to continue to win elections. But that's what the ANC has always done. Has run our democracy for self-preservation so that it can also find ways to amass wealth in the state ecosystem to fund its activities and, of course, its class lifestyles. So I made some notes this morning and yesterday because I want to be kinder. I'm better with notes. So last week we were at the Kgalema Motlanthe Foundation's Inclusive Growth Forum in the Drakensberg. Songes was part of a panel on leadership renewal. Next week on the 2nd of November, Outer is launching a quarterly breakfast series termed The Road to 2024, and I'm asked to speak about, because I made a comment in passing at a dinner, and I said business does not support democracy. And everybody was shocked. So, but they don't. So I'm now been tasked to answer why I think they don't. BMF has a conference next week. On the 3rd, one of their panels is, can South Africa start over? And you are saying, redefine leadership for the future. Tomorrow I'm speaking to former President Kgalema Motlanthe on my show, and we are contending with the idea that came out last weekend that the 1994 consensus is dead. So you must be careful to redefine leadership for a future you might not have. You need to build a crisis rescue mission. And you've got to ask who's going to conduct that rescue mission and what does it demand of us. Therein lies the problem for me, because there's a crisis, but because some people profit from the status quo, they don't talk about this crisis. Or they talk about it so that they are relevant and we can smile with them and laugh with them. But once they leave us, they go and maintain the crisis and profit from the crisis. So on social media, you look at God, God's favorite child, flaunting wealth that is stolen, and they know it's stolen wealth. So when you talk about redefining leadership, now we know there's a crisis. What have we got to do? There are a couple of sacrifices that need to be made. I'm getting a little pained by this conversation the more I have it, because I don't know if we appreciate the urgency of the moment. And one of the things that people in this room must answer is whether or not they are willing to downgrade their cushy lifestyles, their jobs, and go to parliament in 2024. You've got Scopa, the biggest watchdog of the public finances. It gets presented financial statements. Then when the whole episode is done, Kaya Stoll and other Jaja Rakhwans, on Twitter they say, How, but those are not financial statements. Those are income, expenditure. Why? Because you've got politicians who don't know the difference. If you guys
Are there?
have some hope that things will happen without you, good luck. And if you think there are jobs abroad for all of you, good luck, because we are lying. So for me, it's about asking ourselves a very deep and painful question of what is the sacrifice we need to make now to reset the problem in order for us not to sacrifice the future of our children. Thank you.
100%. I like when you talk about the sacrifice, because there's a servant leadership element that comes into that, and leaders in ABASA should be quite familiar with that. And kukabantu bathi apha in the front, asoze siye parliament and sacrifice, you know. So Mbali, I want to now direct this to you, because you've come from a space, a political space, and you were standing up for things in quite a hostile environment. And I think, especially public sector leaders and professionals in this room would probably understand, not having to be a politician, but as people trying to do the right thing in an environment that's not conducive. What is your advice? I know you've left the space, you know, and all of us also leave the space. But what are you doing now, having experienced that, and what is your role and your perceived role as a leader in terms of addressing what is happening in our country?
Thanks, Linda, and thank you for inviting me here today. And I'll get to answering your question, but I just want to touch a little bit on the original question that you asked, Lukhona, because I think it's very important. And having been a politician for many years, I would be the person who would sit across the table listening to whatever was happening in Salga and the municipalities and the different portfolio committees. And I think there's an underappreciation for the people in your profession, I think even amongst yourselves, for how much you hold this country's future in your hands. And if we're going to talk about the fact that we have an economic crisis, but you have to solve the political crisis to solve the economic crisis, and you have to solve the leadership crisis to solve the political crisis, at the crux of that, the only two industries that I can think of right now that could really bring South Africa to its knees are probably the taxi associations and the accounting profession. That's how important and critical the work that you do on an everyday basis is. And I think there needs to be a greater appreciation for just how much power you have. And so I don't want to talk about the issue of redefining leadership at a high level thing. It's actually something that should be happening even where people are, because I think you can lose people when you talk about the abstract ideas of how they need to do. There's actually a lot of work that accountants are able to do right now. And I think for me, this topic about redefining leadership needs to now move beyond the conversation and the dialogue and needs to move to the action. And I mean, someone in your own profession, Babita, was someone that was killed. I've been in situations where we've been locked inside doors when auditors have come in to actually look at what's happening in particular municipalities or in particular portfolios. And so there's a bravery, I suppose, now that comes with being in the accounting profession, because you are the last blue line, you're the last port of call for really ensuring that our government and our country is still able to economically thrive, or at least for calling out the things that we are seeing happening on a daily basis. And so the redefining leadership needs to come with the integrity of where you are, whether you're the kind of person who's going to continue the status quo, or whether you can call out, even amongst yourselves, the people who might have been turning a blind eye or who might be responsible for some of the things that we've seen happening in our state. And so I think just as ABASA, as all the different entities that you have as part of the accounting profession, the conversation mustn't just be about, are you going to go to Parliament? Because that's also not everyone's suited for that particular role. But what is it that, as a profession, you're doing to actually be able to galvanize and mobilize the significant skills that you have to actually make sure that the country is still progressing? And I think a big part of that is the action to have the integrity amongst yourselves and call out the people that are bringing the profession into disrepute. And I think more importantly, it's to start taking on the role of being the people that are going to hold politicians to account when they can't. Because Lukhona is absolutely right. There's been many instances in meetings where you know that the people that are reading these financial statements don't know what's happening. And this is where your profession should really be taking, I think, far more action and leading that conversation. And so I left politics, and I think, you know, I needed the break from the toxicity of being sometimes the only person in the room that was doing that, because 15 years is a long time to put yourself through that. But I will go back because I think that the work is important. And the work that I do now is trying to be in communities and to build other aspects of society that can have the muscle and the strength and the muscle memory to be able to take on these fights wherever they are. Because I'm also somebody who thinks that the time has come now for us to also hyper-localize where people are into actually organizing and mobilizing for the kind of change. And so whether that's in the profession of accountants, or whether that's in something like community action groups or social mobilization groups, wherever that needs to be is where I'm putting my time and energy into helping people have that space and be able to challenge in a way that is going to actually change things. And I'm certainly not lost to politics. I'll go back, I think, once I've just had a bit of a feeling that I've also contributed in seeing the fruits of something else happening in our country. And I suppose it's the same for people in your profession. It's hard to be the only person, and somebody has to do it. But at least you guys have the backing of professional associations behind you, and you have a lot more than what politicians do. And I think even the politicians that you do see trying to do a good job, there's a need for them to know that they can rely on you. I think that your profession should be going to places like Salga and offering to help where there are deficiencies in how municipalities are conducting themselves, because that's the core face of service delivery. And you can't tell me that we have, you know, so many municipal managers or people that should be dealing with the money of our country unable to do so when there's a whole room of people that would be able to help them. And so maybe that's a challenge for your organization, even if it's at a level that's maybe at pro bono reduced rates or something. I don't know, I'm sure you guys can figure out how to do it, but there's a crisis that literally needs accountants. Help save our municipalities, because by doing that, you're going to help save what little of the governance that actually needs to work for our country actually operates.
Yeah. Thank you, Mbali. I think now you're responding to professionals, right? But I want us to look at how these and look on, I'm not going to go back to you, but you are part of them. Ne? These movements that are now coming up. And when I listen to them, the target is professionals, right? And I think we've engaged with them and said, why professionals? Why is it that it's there? I want to come to you, Monde, because from a leadership development perspective, if we're going to change something right now, it might not be at this level. Right? What are we doing about young people who are probably the change makers? And we know in the history of our country, if anything was to move, you needed to mobilize young people, right? Are we saying that we've shifted that perspective? Because we have students in the room and we are grooming them to say you're apolitical. But then when you're saying apolitical, they think that they are divorced from politics. And we can't divorce ourselves from politics, it's everywhere. When you develop leaders, how do you incorporate the fact that politics are everywhere, especially with young people, and prepare them for that so that they are resilient when the challenging times come, when we have to find the solutions and implement them?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, colleagues. Thank you for having us this afternoon. That question is not a new one in terms of the black lobby groups. Even in the BMF, we are political, right? And that's always been part of the debate. But I just want to utilize the black lobby groups as a microcosm of leadership development vis-a-vis and also economic development and economic leadership. So I like to separate political leadership and economic leadership deliberately. So when you hear the word leadership, even on the ground, even with youth structures, the first thing that comes to mind is political leadership and not necessarily economic leadership. Okay. But when you talk profession and degrees, etc., now you're moving to the professional space as if it's a dividing line between the two. They converge, but at the same time, we need to understand their power in their respective spaces. Economic leadership talks to the power of business. And business is so powerful, it has an overriding effect. So it doesn't matter what your training may have been professionally, doesn't matter your background where you are, but business is exceptionally powerful in any capitalistic society. So these are some of the things that we need to discuss as we're developing economic leadership. The radicalism of youthfulness is a natural phenomenon. It's not something that needs to be taught. It's something that is inbuilt. The pushback, the energy that you have amongst young people is something that needs to be harnessed. The youth of 76 not necessarily needed to tell them their role. They, in fact, took the initiative that we need to understand the levers of power, and the levers of power within a society is business. So they pushed for the stay away, right, firstly, and secondly, then they pushed not to be taught in Afrikaans. Right? So, and if you listen to interviews of that generation of 76 around their understanding, 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds, of their understanding of economics, it's quite phenomenal. Yeah. You go today to a 2000 who's 16 and 17, and you ask them about what are the levers of the economy today. It's almost chalk and cheese. I'm not saying it's always chalk and cheese. It's almost chalk and cheese. So when you listen to Etsietsi Mashinini articulating the power of business, the power of the economy, that you need to halt the economy in order for them to listen. We need to stay away, right, etc., and deal with the economic system. These are thoughts coming from young people that have engaged themselves within the political economy as well. So in bringing young people onto the conversation, onto the platform, we need to understand where they are. We need to understand what they are thinking. We need to understand their worldview. What is their take on the country? Where do they see the country? What is their understanding of the history of the country? And where exactly the power really lies. And I'm saying that the power of business is such that it is so overriding that pre-1994, it was easy to identify the enemy, but post-1994, the enemy now looks like you.
Hey.
So now we've got a double whammy. We've got the power of business on one side that has an overriding effect, and then you have those who have their levers on that power who look like you, who behave in an adverse way, contrary to how we used to articulate things pre-1994. So now you've got a multi-layered challenge of leadership when you talk development, because what exactly are you now trying to develop outside of the professional space? So there's technical ability on one side, it's critical, it's crucial that we need technical ability, but on the other side, we also need to understand the levers of power from a leadership perspective. So in the BMF, we talk about developing managerial leadership, management, processes, and systems. Leadership is about vision, inspiring people, but how do you then vet the genuineness of those leaders that are coming into the system and within organizations? So we see it in the consulting that we do in terms of C-suite engagement with leaders. In fact, there's one organization who told us that, and I won't mention which one, who told us that through our research work, the very people are saying there is no leadership. Now, when you give feedback to senior leadership, these are highly skilled individuals, highly competent at face value, and you tell them that your own people are saying there is no leadership within the space. So you can see now that even the practice of leadership is a space that we need to move into. Now, I don't want to talk for too long, but I want to go right back into the involvement and the development of leadership. One of the preeminent ideas within the 70s with the BMF and the founder president and the other numbers, or the other day I discovered that I was here on Thursday evening, I discovered the number 1 is here, number 2 is here. I saw number 6 was there, number 8 was there, number 13 was there, yes. Number 15 was there, number 16 was there. And I think, so it's a very interesting culture that you have, but I think it's a conversation for another day. that you've also done something within ABASA that can be replicated across organizations. Not just with that numbers thing, but the amount of support. I think it's the first time I've been in a room with so many past presidents of a particular organization just for a book launch, not necessarily a conference, for a book launch preceded by a golf day. So there's something that you've done right in your leadership succession. There's something that the founder members have done very well in supporting successive leaders, because they could have kept their distance. And they have not kept that distance. They keep their finger on the dial. So you must be commended that you're doing something right from a leadership development perspective.
Yeah.
You can clap hands for yourself. But the point I wanted to make about one of the preeminent ideas about leadership development is that in the 70s, the founder members of the BMF were put under pressure to join another Afrikaans institute. Right? So they said to them, why did you join them and develop your leadership? And Bob Mafuna tells a story, and he said, no, we're not going to rope up a dying horse. Right? We want to build something for black people, built by black sweat. On the other side of it is the whole issue of we need to have a management program. Today, when I speak about this in the BMF, I say to them, we used to say there needs to be a BMF academy, but I think it should be called the School of Leadership Practice. Okay. So I think that in the space of leadership development, not just in the BMF, but all the black lobby groups, we really need to have that conversation of developing a school of leadership practice. And the experiences, leadership experiences that have been had by black leaders within the economic space, especially in the economic leadership space, in developing particular outlook on management and leadership styles from an African perspective, and not from a Eurocentric driven perspective, right? So we go to school and we are trained to be Eurocentric in our ideas and competencies, but in actual fact, we have not drunk from the African soil. So I think that the lobby groups need to do this project, the School of Leadership Practice, so that we harness our collective power and the leadership experiences that have been held, and that the past presidents and many others, so that when we engage young people about leadership development and harnessing their power, that they see that leadership is not just a title, it is a practice in and of itself.
Yeah. The panel is not sponsored by BMF, just by the way. I want to go to the part where, and Bali, I think you'll probably be well placed in answering my question. What makes it so hard for us to mobilize our people? I mean, we can see what the issue is, but in order for us to get to the destination, we need to go together. And everybody's got, like how you say, there are people sitting on the benefits of the status quo. And that's probably why we are not moving in the same direction. What is going to get us to mobilize and unite for a particular cause, in your view, as someone looking at a 2024, where we could potentially vote for a candidate as opposed to a party?
Yeah, Linda, a question for the ages, because I think if anyone had a real answer to that, we wouldn't be in the situation. And I think one of the problems that we have with South Africans is that we're just far too resilient. We take a lot of crap, and we try to find like the best out of the situation. We make memes, we have TikToks. I mean, there's a bomb scare in Sandton, and you would never think so, because all the things were like memes about people being like, and it's one of the best things about us, but it's also one of the things that it makes us always like incrementally just, we're going to change this a little bit. The interest rate is going up. Okay, let's just adjust here a little bit. Or this is happening. Let's do as much as possible to try and take it upon ourselves to take the strain, whether it's the education system or healthcare, we'll privatize, we'll do this. And I think that for South Africans, it might just take a situation of us, kind of like what we saw last year, and I was in Durban during the riots, of it being right in our face. And that's a horrible thing to say, because I don't think that many people will be able to survive an onslaught as bad as that if it really came at the level. But it's very difficult to think what else is going to get us out of the inertia. And I speak to the people in this room who are part of the 5%. You're part of the people that are insulated from feeling the brunt of the everyday difficulties that a lot of people feel. And the people that are feeling those difficulties on the everyday are so worried about the food that they have to put into their stomach and their children being okay, that they don't also have the time to then also be able to ponder about the big issues. It's not because they don't know them, but you can't do that when you don't have the luxury of time and you have to be worried about the basic necessities. And that's why people say it should be incumbent on us as the people that do have the time, do have the space, do have the cushioning to be leading that. But then we don't, because we can watch the protests from our apartments in Sandton and feel really bad and tweet a little bit about it, but then not actually have to do anything. And so it's a difficult question to answer without saying that we need to eventually experience the worst of what can happen in order for us to be mobilized. And there'll be Mbalis every now and then who say, come on guys, here's a really good issue, here's something that's happening, whatever. I mean, people are raping children in schools on a daily basis, so it doesn't even faze us anymore. And so you kind of get to the situation where you don't know what it's going to take for us to be able to mobilize. If I had to just guess, I think it's going to be a combination of the emergence of new leaders that are coming forward, because I think we're all tired of, across the board, all the people that we see in our current political leadership. So we need new leaders, and then we have to support them. We can't sit around and say, oh, but now there's too many parties coming into it, because that's actually going to be defeating the point of the people that are trying to actually create change. And if it means that we have to vote for a new party at every election that comes up with them, then we do that and we get into the ability of actually being able to hold politicians and people who are in leadership to account, because that's the only way that you're going to galvanize people who are better into coming up, because they see that there's actually a potential for support. And unless we're prepared to do that, unless you're prepared to take sandwiches to the people that are going to be standing at those voting stations, unless you're prepared to make sure that your kids are registered and are actually also having some kind of democratic input into the situation, then we're going to come and we're going to sit in these kind of panels for the next 20 years, and we're going to be okay because we have professional jobs and we can kind of make it okay. But the rest of the country is going to be burning around us, and eventually it might be our children that bear the major brunt of it. But I think for me, as I was saying, redefining leadership means taking action now. And unless it's action that you're taking where you are, then we're going to have the situation. And so it is difficult to mobilize, but it's going to take a combination of the right issues, the right time, and the right people coming up. And unfortunately, there's just no recipe for that. But there's no excuse for us also taking a back seat and hoping that other people are going to do it. Or I'm an accountant, I don't really do politics. Well, politics does you. So that's the reality of the situation. Politics does you.
So, Mr. Ngodini, politics does you. Accountants are saying this. I'm saying I'm not, and we are on the road to an election. What are the 3 things you would want to say to this room, right? As somebody who's part of an organization that wants to see a change, and probably looking at the people sitting in this room, what are the 3 things you think we are missing? And what do we do about making sure that we don't miss this opportunity?
So the first one for me, I would say Mbali is entirely optimistic. If you don't do anything, in 20 years' time, you will not be able to have this kind of gathering. You just won't be able to. You would have deteriorated so badly, so much, that the country would be a corpse. And some of us will be Uber drivers in Greece, or the former Minister of Finance in Afghanistan is an Uber driver in the US. So these are not theoretical things. These are practical issues. The second thing is to again emphasize what Mbali is saying. When we started off the Rivonia Circle, People there on Twitter, who are usually the people who are in this room. Yeah, too elite. What can they achieve? Yeah, they are going to be in air-conditioned offices. We've gone to communities because we think we've actually found a strategy to mobilize society, at least on a conversation about South Africa, through our Democracy Builder program. And we've been to over 30 communities in 7 different provinces since January this year. Yeah. And we don't only go there.
Yes, you can clap.
Thank you. We don't only go there to have a conversation, because I've been challenging people for the last few years to say, it's not civic education that is missing. It's not voter education that is missing. Voting day in South Africa is a public holiday. In any case, for the unemployed, who are the majority of the people in our society, every day is a public holiday. But it's the truth. Now, so people are not busy on voting day. They simply choose not to go vote. So when you say you're going to do voter education, what do you mean? Go have civic conversations with society. Understand where their station is and why they've opted out. There was a by-election in Mthatha last week, or this week. The biggest voting station in the Mthatha CBD had a voter turnout of 3%.
Sure.
And yet in the same by-election, other wards were having voter turnouts of more than 50%. But what do you connect it to? There's nothing happening in Mthatha. Just go see Mthatha. What are people voting for? I mean, people who have seen Mthatha in the last 20 years transform. And I mean transform by deteriorate. In Ngab's Mall, Mthatha, 2 people were shot dead, minutes apart. People's houses are being hijacked. Universities' properties hijacked. Talk to people from the Walter Sisulu University. Nothing is functioning. So we've got to then say, let's support the initiatives that are coming. Yeah. Yes, let's interrogate what their intention is, what their purpose is, but let's not be bystanders. That's the second thing. Because we now know what being bystanders. And yes, not everybody is going to leave their jobs. But Songes Osibi, myself, we had a very difficult conversation last year and said, if we're going to get this right, you have to leave ABASA. And I'm going to find ways to leave things that give me daily commitments. And we did that, went around with begging heads, get some funding here, get some funding there. And again, black people on Twitter will ask, hey, where do you get your funding? Stellenbosch project. Ask that person for 100 rand, they won't give it to you. So the third thing is, we've got to open our pockets to fund people. If we don't have the time, the people who are making, because our families must not starve as well. Our kids must still go to school. And unfortunately in South Africa, the first movers are Afrikaner business owners.
Yes, true.
And in any case, the last thing I'll say, I wanted to read from my notes because I want to emphasize what Umonde was saying about ABASA. So I said in my notes, ABASA, when I look at your past and present leaders, I must say I admire how you have managed to have seamless transitions in leadership, with the baton passing on from one generation to the next. Fortunately, I have not heard of a past president who wants to come back to the leadership structures, unlike that other organization. And I said organizations where leaders cannot move on often find themselves in a moribund state.
Yeah.
I've voted for 5 or 6 different political parties. And I'm proud of that. This idea of loyalty to political parties is anti-democratic. And that's the last thing we need to unlearn with ourselves. And I think one of the things that ABASA will lead on, this ability of being intergenerational. Because I'm worried that there's an intergenerational warfare that's going to come in this country. Where young people, they're already saying it on Twitter, old people must go and look after their grandkids. Now Monde is talking about this radical temperament. When that thing gains momentum, there will be displacement of all people in a very radical, violent way. And I think we need to start a negotiation of intergenerational power transfer. And I think ABASA, because of its success, must be one of the organizations that put up its hands and say we are willing to be part of the conveners. And we need to do this between now and March next year. Not 2024. Now and March. Tinero Vonia Cycle, we are available. People must give us a call.
So number 113 and you Nivelemos. Yeah, okay. We've got some time for 2 questions. Let me start with 2 and let's see how we do with the responses. Any questions for the panel? Oh, she's okay. You'll help me, Tabo.
Yep. I built the 2. Get your hands.
How many are there?
Can we recycle them like?
Yes, you may.
All right, thank you.
We will be led.
I didn't really have a question, but I was hoping there'll be new other hands. But I think mine, Madam President, is the question you actually did ask for me on the issue of mobilization. Every 4 years in November, I get excited because there's I think the so-called leaders of democracy in the world, they go on elections. I like their system because although they have 2 parties, you have the 2 competing, going door to door, speaking to that civil relation. They go door to door, campaign for their party, and it gets the whole country active on their election, and that's the USA. I think in mobilizing, that's probably something that we need to consider. Also something that you guys have done. That's why I was the first one to applaud, because it's very important that we get our own people active. And it's true that, as you said, the majority of people who are sitting and not voting are the unemployed. How do we who are employed connect with them? Because I know, probably let me speak personally, sort of challenging for me to go and engage with unemployed. Not because I don't want to, but because I know they want money. That's the first thing they want to ask. They want to smoke or they want to do something else. But how do we then begin to learn and say, irrespective of that, how do we go and engage with them, speak with them? Most of them, we grew up with them. And you are right when we're saying we are the privileged ones. And within time, this must just go away. The unrest might just be a warning for us to say, let's wake up and do something. Because when it did happen, we were able to do something. Number 1, during lunch, he saw me carrying a book and he says, I'm glad you bought the book, I'm also gonna buy. We need to have more of these books. There's a saying that if something is a principle, it's because it works all the time. What are the principles that ABASA can teach so that we can have something revolutionary that will mimic the achievement that they've achieved? What are the principles that we can bring out so that the new leaders will bring out something new?
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Do we have another one? Okay.
Thank you. I want to talk about the action that we all have to do. I always think we have leaders and managers, and I will try to define the two in my context. One, we have people who are in positions of power. They have authority, but they do not have power. So their position gives them the responsibilities, which gives the authority to do certain things, but they don't have power. I think I've seen that in one of the board meetings, SCOPA meetings, where they were discussing ESCOM. One female board member left because it seemed like there's no power. There's authority in terms of their board responsibilities, but the power is not there. So my question is to say, are we having people sitting in these leadership positions within government space, be it its municipality, department, who have authority in terms of their responsibilities but do not have power because maybe they are deployed, there are people who are saying, this you can't do, this you can do. And if that's the case, how do we then get to talk about professionals who have to go into that space and ensure that those people has to have power? And if that's not the, what should happen? I think they always talk about Minister of Public Enterprise and saying, it seems like you are interfering with the affairs of the state-owned entities, and that would mean the people who are leading those entities do not have power, but they do have authority in terms of their responsibilities. Thank you.
Would you like to take a stab at that, Bali?
Sure, I'll answer the second question. For me, I have no time for people that are not, that are in positions, that they choose to be in positions and are given authority and then don't know how to exercise power. Why did you want to be there? What was the point of you trying to lobby or get to that position if you're going to cry now about actually having to do the hard work that comes with leadership? It's not going to be easy. And so I don't have time even for our president and his spinelessness and the people that have the authority to actually create systems or create or bring together people that can actually help them to run the country in the way that it should. And so I hear your question, but for me, there's a disdain from my side about somebody who can come there and have all the power in the world, but still be scared of certain people telling them things in their ears. Either you want to be there and you're ready to lead and you're ready to do the hard work and you're ready to cut anyone off at the knees that needs to be, or you shouldn't be in that position. And you're holding us all back by trying to be willy-nilly about not knowing what you're actually doing there. And so I think that we must stop having any time for those people that seem as though they've been put into positions of authority and power because they like to be there, but are not willing to do all the hard work and the difficult decisions it takes, and not being liked sometimes, and not being conflict avoidant that comes with actually being a leader. Otherwise, what are you there for? And why should we be entertaining you? And so I don't have time for people that are going to cry about having positions of authority but are scared to actually use it. Then get out.
Yeah. Yeah. Monday?
Just to add very quickly, interesting dynamic is that the choices that an organization makes reflect the CEO. The CEO or managing director or DG is a reflection of the principal shareholder's ideology. So those guys, they're not necessarily the best around, right? They may be CAs, etc., but they're not necessarily the best around. They survive in those positions because they are totally in line with the principal shareholder's ideology and worldview. But the challenge in this country, which we need to heighten the issue, is that be that as it may, that a CEO in an organization reflects the principal shareholder's ideology and worldview, that we've got to be more transformational and bold within those organizations and take the hard decisions that we are going to take this route for the survival of the country. Now, we've also seen on JC-listed companies where CEOs, black CEOs in particular, the very few of them, were trying to do that. And we saw this at play, that the principal shareholder were at odds, and the board were at odds with a CEO because of a strategic issue. But not a lot of detail is given all the time. But we can see these power dynamics. So we must also commend those black CEOs that actually are trying to push the needle within, but don't get the support of a board which sometimes half of the board is black. So you get a board that's half black, not supporting a new direction because they all want to be aligned with the principal shareholder all the time. So we need to be very mindful of these dynamics, that the decisions reflect, in most cases, even the decisions in what to sponsor, by the way. We won't sponsor your golf day, but we sponsor cycling. That decision reflects the CEO and it reflects the ideology of the principal shareholder all the time. If the CEO defaulters in issues of consequence, then you know what's going to happen. There will be marching orders. So many of you who are here in those positions of authority and power from a board level must protect the different black CEOs that come into organizations. Earlier, I think President number 12 was talking.
13.
It was 13.
13.
On the issue of support and diversity and inclusion. It's going to be very difficult to have diversity if we don't do affirmative action correctly. So in other words, if we don't bring in, deliberately so, more people who are diverse, then what are you diversifying within an organization that lacks the difference that you're looking for? And so this is part of the hard transformational work from a leadership perspective. Lastly, on the issue of mobilization, I am personally very worried about the voter turnout all the time. And Lukhona and I discussed this in private a lot as well. Very worried about that. You can't have 30% voter turnout on local government elections. There's something very seriously wrong with that. So the power that ABASA holds and the lobby groups and the BBC should be convening all of the lobby groups, by the way, to actually come and discuss the mandates of all the black lobby groups, to discuss their impact. And even some of them, we may need to close them because they are not making a clear difference. But someone needs to call for it. So I think ABASA has that role to play, firstly. Secondly, also campaigning on the importance of taking our citizenship seriously.
Yeah.
Because someone needs to elevate that narrative to its rightful place.
Yeah.
So we may change the Electoral Act, etc., and the bill, and Lukhona has been fiery about that, if you've seen him out there on that issue. That may change, but the attitude, the mindset, right, on the people of the ground will be determined by what the middle class does in response to an ailing political economy. So if the middle class keep quiet, then the masses know there's no hope and no future. We might as well burn this country. But if the middle class, my father used to like to make this analogy, when the plane breaks down on the tarmac, you call a special force. And that special force, he used to say, is the black middle class. The country is about to fail. I don't think it's going to fail because we are here. We are here. So because of our presence, we are a special task force. And believing in organizations like ABASA that have the power of convening, the power not just of the profession, the power of your voice. So I think ABASA is a sleeping giant to a certain extent, amongst others, but you're a giant. And I think from an advocacy perspective and a thought leadership development perspective, there's so much more space for ABASA to stand up and speak. Imagine an ABASA standing up and speaking a clear position on policy issues, transformational issues, not just a statement, but clear position. Madam President standing up and being very clear on the failures of BBBE and what must happen in the country. And the BBBE Commission has been complaining, by the way, for some years, especially the commissioner, that there is a muzzling of black voices. There's a silencing of black voices. So I think ABASA has a lot more to offer this country. And I think with the current leadership and the support of the stalwarts, we will be successful.
There. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Lukhona, Mbali, Monde, youth ke le. And I think that's why this conversation was so important. Young people really driving the conversation around leadership excellence and what we need to do in this country. Thank you very much. I'm not going to keep you between your lunch, which is waiting. So let's off to lunch.
No, thank you. Thank you. Nagentando sweet.
I hate it.